I've just
Night
picked
school.
You
You picked a scab?
No. What were you saying?
I was saying night school.
Night school.
Today, I want to talk about Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century.
Dope.
Evolution and the Challenges of Modern Life by Heather Heying and Bret Weinstein. Bret Weinstein he's a professor and an evolutionary biologist, as is Heather Heying. They taught at Evergreen College, and in 2017, you're familiar with it, but for those that aren't, it's a whole mess happened where Bret Weinstein voiced his disapproval about a movement that was happening at Evergreen College. Evergreen College is extremely liberal, and they have a day of, a day of recognition or something like that, where basically the thing is, anyone who is not white doesn't come to the school a certain day of the year by choice to show how poorly things work if you don't have those people and how important those people are to the community and to the college as a whole. One year in 2017, a student body of some kind decided, what we're doing this year is we're going to do it the other way, and instead white people aren't allowed to go to school. And Bret Weinstein sent out an email to the school saying, hey, I think this is actually racist. And then a riot happened, and a group of sort of social justice warrior students took over the school and literally had the teachers hostage.
Yeah.
The videos are crazy. They're on YouTube.
The videos are very interesting.
And Heather Heying, I believe she was I think she co-authored that email as well, but I think he just maybe decided to take on the brunt of the heat. And because of that, he's also taken on the brunt of the name recognition, I suppose.
Speaking of name recognition and him taking the brunt and everything, aren't they married?
They are.
How come her name isn't Weinstein?
Weinstein.
He did all that for her?
They were married far before that. I don't know. She's just a modern, confident woman. And you know what's actually really interesting? It's funny you bring that up, I guess, because they are extremely liberal, is the truth.
Right.
But they're extremely, sincerely
They were
liberal
98%
people.
in agreement with Evergreen, and they're like, hey, on this 2% thing, and they just got chased out of town.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole school, they tried to tear the school down. Well, they didn't literally do that. But yeah, they're extremely liberal, extremely progressive people.
Right. But now they're plunged into the intellectual dark web.
But now people think they're the alt-right.
Right.
Yeah. So, in the wake of that became a big news story. Weinstein went on Rogan, and since then he's been on a bunch of times. Heather's been on a bunch of times. His brother, Eric Weinstein, has also become a pretty common guest on Rogan.
Yeah, he's badass.
Has his own podcast, too.
He's a grumpy man. Very smart and very grumpy man.
A little grumpy, yeah. Got real mad at Tim Dillon, because Tim Dillon goofed on him a little bit.
Oh, really?
Eric Weinstein got real mad at Tim Dillon. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He failed the test. There's an initiation rite in the intellectual dark web right now. It's Tim Dillon's going to roast you on a level that hurts, and you got to deal with it.
And he did get his feelings hurt.
Yeah,
and then Tim Dillon did have a lot of fun with that when he got his feelings hurt. It's great. But, they came to prominence through that. They have their own podcast now as well, Dark Horse Podcast. And I believe this is the first book they've co-wrote together. Could be wrong. They explained that an agent approached them sort of in the wake of that whole situation, basically wanting to capitalize off the thing because now they've got name recognition. And this was the book they wanted to write. Evergreen College, they ran in a very unusual way where it was not a school where there was different classes taught by different professors. Instead, you taught a class and you were with that class for the whole time. So the whole school experience was with your professor.
Oh, so you didn't instruct a class, you advised a cohort through their
whole educational experience at Evergreen College. So they taught a class together at Evergreen College and spent a lot of time doing field work. They're very into going out into the field, and they're very into connecting with their students. And we're big on answering practical questions about their understanding of evolution and what that means for what we are and how we should attempt to be or how we should attempt to live. And so they spent a lot of time answering those sorts of questions and thinking through biologically, evolutionarily, what kind of systems did we live in, and what kind of systems do we exist in now.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of this book is the idea that every living creature on Earth has a niche that they fit into,
Mm-hmm.
and that humans' niche is niche switching, is the ability to like go off into their conversation with Jordan Peterson is really interesting because there is sort of that metaphor of like we go out into the desert and like in search of opportunity, and we can find opportunity anywhere, and there's a lot of interesting symbolism to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that our niche has always been the ability to find somewhere to go. Anywhere that there's plants, we can find some way to live.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And
they consider that the primary human niche switching?
That's what they say. Yeah, they consider our niche to be the ability to find niches all over the place.
So
and
like
adapt
Pokemon
to them.
terms, we'd be like what's it called?
Ditto?
Yeah, we were dittos.
I suppose so, yeah.
He doesn't really have a type. So
yeah.
He figures it out.
We can morph to our environment. We can change if we need to, much more readily than other creatures can.
Mm-hmm.
Like within one lifetime, we can just totally adapt to an area and then teach the next generation how to exist in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other animals can't do that. But like you and I could go off into the desert, and there's plausible that we could end up figuring out how to make things work there.
Right.
And so their whole point, though, is that although we are capable of adapting to our environment very quickly, adapting to novelty, what we have now is hyper-novelty, meaning that the world around us, the environment, is changing too quickly for us to keep up with it and be healthy. So although we are the most, as they said, we are not blank slates, but we are the blankest slate that nature has ever created. And it is still too much for us because the world is changing too quickly with the rise of technology, with the rise in our connection with other people, and we can't keep up with it. So this book is sort of...
Wait, can I ask a question real
yeah.
quick? I'm curious in what sense our slate is blank. Is it that we are able to quickly forget old habits and form new ones?
That's what they mean.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That we can write new programming. We can, as they use a lot of like sort of Matrix-esque, like we can bootstrap a new program onto ourselves. We can do that very quickly.
Right.
But we can't do it as quick as our world is changing right now, because right now we are being born into one world and dying in another because our environment is changing so rapidly.
And we're not living in any. Just dying in one and being born in one. We're not even really like in stable living existence in any particular
because it's just
state right now.
The walls, like the carpet's being pulled, the rug's being pulled out from under us constantly.
Right.
And so this book is an attempt to very broadly address a lot of things about various aspects of culture and health and just about every topic.
I'm really curious what it'll say about sleep, because the way we sleep is so different than how we've been sleeping for like 100,000 years or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, they do go into that.
Sweet.
And they intend to like sort of break some of these ideas down and do sort of bigger books on health or on different topics. So this book is really broad. It covers a lot of topics, and I'm going to approach this in a little bit of a lazy way in terms of like how I'm going to talk about it. I don't have any notes here, but at the end of each chapter is kind of named after a different topic of life, I suppose. And at the end of each chapter, they have a section called Corrective Lens, and it's like this is how we should be adjusting to our environment so that we will be healthier. Like how we can adjust to our current environment such that it is something our bodies and our minds could reasonably handle.
Very cool.
And so how we can live in this world in a way that's more natural. So I'm going to do more reading in this episode than I think I've ever done in an episode. But it'll give us a lot to talk about. And I feel like I just want to get all of these things across. They're all interesting points. And I don't really want to skip any of them.
Awesome. Do it.
Okay. The first chapter is called Ancient Bodies, Modern World. And the corrective lens here. So there's it's sort of a bullet point thing, and then it expands on it a little bit, each one.
Okay.
Become skeptical of novel solutions to ancient problems. especially when that novelty will be difficult to reverse if you change your mind later. New and audacious technologies, from experimental surgery to the cessation of human development using hormones, to nuclear fission, may be wonderful and risk-free, but chances are there are hidden and not so hidden costs. So I think this is a really key one, a really broad one for the whole book. But the idea being, like, we are presented so many things and we're told, like, this will fix the problem. And we are meant to trust that there's not going to be side effects or that there's not going to be problems with that. I think, like, nuclear technology is a really interesting one. Like, because a lot of people say that that would be the most efficient way for us to be approaching electricity or energy, I suppose. But it's really hard to say what the true costs of that are, because there's so many weird things going on such a finite level that it's hard to say what exactly that is. So I think it's like saying, don't be cocky and think that you understand everything about what's going to happen with this new technology that you've invented to solve this problem. Because there's probably things that you haven't thought about because you're limited.
Right.
And there are tried and true ways to solve a lot of problems, and those should be prioritized. Recognize the logic of trade-offs and learn how to work with them. Division of labor allows human populations to beat trade-offs that individuals cannot. And by specializing in different habitats and niches, the human species beats trade-offs that no single population can. So we have the advantage of being able to, because we can communicate with each other and we can team up, we can specialize in different things. And it's okay that I am not as good at something as you are because I have you. And it's okay that you aren't as good at something as I am because you have me. Become someone who recognizes patterns about yourself. Hack your habits and your physiology. What stimulates you to eat, to exercise, to check social media? Understanding the patterns in your behaviors gives you a better chance of controlling those behaviors. That I think is really good advice that I can think of cases in my own life, but it can sometimes be hard to give up one thing because it's associated with something that you like. Like maybe you end up snacking too much when you smoke weed. So maybe you should stop smoking the weed. Like maybe you have to go further back and understand what triggers you to do that. And you need to avoid doing the things that trigger you to do the things that you don't want to do. Yeah.
Not telling anyone to go out and do anything drastic like stop smoking weed.
That would be stupid. That's just like a fun example.
Like a stupid example.
You should all smoke weed. Look out for Chesterton's fence and invoke the precautionary principle when messing with ancestral systems. Remember this, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Chesterton's fence refers to something that a guy named Chesterton said, and the message is basically, if someone goes up to a gate, if someone finds like a gate on a path, you're walking down a path, and you come to a fence or a gate, and it's blocking you from getting where you want to go, someone might go, well, I don't know what this gate's for, get rid of it. But Chesterton's point was that if you don't understand, basically it was like, I won't let you smash that gate until you can tell me what the gate is for.
Right.
Go find out what this gate is for.
So, do you remember when those friends of Kelly came over like last week after we did a birthday party, and one of them was talking about like a scripture that he thought was just abhorrently evil, and it was like Jesus saying, you have to follow me, and you have to put me before mother, father, brother, and sister. And he was bringing it up like, God, look how evil this sounds. And I was like, well, what's the meaning behind it?
I wasn't tuned into this.
Oh, it was in the you might not have been in the room when it happened, but one of them was like vaguely kind of halfway Christian. One of them was like, that's stupid. And me and the one dude were like dialoguing about Christianity a little bit, like, hey, this J. Cole song's nice. It kind of talks about God.
There you go.
And then this guy was like, look at the scripture. Like, how horrible is this? And I was like, what does that mean, though? Like, what? He's like, nothing. Doesn't mean anything. It's like, well, Why do you
Someone wrote it.
Why is it in every nightstand in every hotel in America? What is this? What does that mean?
So don't destroy things if you don't understand why they were there.
Right.
If you don't understand why a rule exists,
right,
then you shouldn't get rid of the rule.
Right.
Maybe the rule existed for a good reason that is no longer accurate, and you should get rid of the fence. But you need to find that out first.
Like Paul in the Bible said, "I am above the law." Like he was saying, like I understand what God's laws are for, and so I transcend law. Which is an insane thing to say. Like, it's a very weird line.
He said, I am
above the... No, he didn't say it with those words, but he referred to himself as being above the law, yet choosing to subject himself to the law. So he's saying basically, like, all these laws that we put in this whole Christian religion thing, I get what they're all for, so I don't really need them, but I just follow them for all your sake.
Gotcha.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah. Which, I like that one. That's very good advice. And that's all for that one. The next chapter was on medicine. Listen to your body, remembering that pain evolved to protect you. Pain is information about the environment and how your body is responding to it. Some injuries require professional treatment, but some can be monitored without intervention. Pain is both unpleasant and adaptive. Think twice before shutting down its message.
Interesting.
Which, I do think that's like kind of a tough one sometimes for me to determine whether like, because I do sometimes feel like there's an ethic to just like gritting through some pain, but I suppose it's just you need to try and understand your body and understand what pain is trying to tell you. Whether it's like it's telling you like, hey, this is messed up, and like, hey, but there's nothing I can do about it, so you're just gonna have to hurt for a little bit, and or maybe it's like, hey, this hurts, and like maybe you should step off of that stove. Or whatever, you know. Yeah,
well, do they have a concrete example in medicine of a time where suppressing pain prevents the patient from understanding the root cause of the problem that you remember?
No, I don't remember one mentioned in the book. But I've heard of people without the sense of touch, and I've heard of them accidentally.
That's extremely dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of them accidentally injuring themselves. It sounds nice on paper, but it's not, because you do need that data.
Right.
Yeah.
But most of the situations I think of where let's say you want to get drunk and so you pop ibuprofen because you know that then you're not going to have a hangover. It's like, well, yeah, I know what the hangover is telling me, but I want to do it anyway. You know, it's not like the ibuprofen prevents me from knowing that alcohol is going to give me a hangover.
Yeah.
It's just... So I'm trying to think of an example where people are popping ibuprofen and they don't realize, or hydros or whatever.
Yeah. I think you can die if you take ibuprofen and drink alcohol.
That's like, that can be like really bad for you.
Really?
Let's just note that there. I think you can die.
Yeah, disclaimer. Yeah. Check with the CDC.
Check with CDC. We don't know anything. We don't know anything. We don't know anything. Move your body every day. Take walks. Mix it up. Don't do the same thing all the time. And don't move your body in the same way whenever you move it. And, at least sometimes, move intensely. And move outside where the stakes are higher.
That is the nerdiest way to explain how to work out I've ever heard.
There was a lot of times where I was reading this and I'm like, God, do you have to it's the tone of it I don't always like of this
book.
And
move outside and move vigorously and
take
move for
walks.
30 minutes.
Mix it up. Don't do the same thing all the time, and don't move your body in the same way whenever you move it. And at least sometimes move intense. There's so many comma asides, and at least sometimes
comma
move intensely and move outside where the stakes are higher. Those are all in one sentence.
Sounds like a clunky old scripture.
Yeah. But that is not revolutionary, but good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should walk.
I don't often think about the benefit of doing novel exercises. Do you have any more details about that? Because I have a couple ways that I exercise. I do this. I'm either going to do yoga or I'm going to go run on the treadmill or whatever. I have 4 things that I might do. It's not like I do a bunch of new exercises.
That is a good point. Maybe I didn't give enough credit to that because that's not really obvious. And I certainly when I do get in grooves where I am exercising, it's almost always the same thing repeatedly because that's how I tend to be. Just do the same thing over and over.
You're like, I did P90X when I was 12. I remember how to work out. You do the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the idea to move outside, I think, is also a
true.
good idea. And move where you could get hurt, where the stakes are higher, where you could where there is some sort of risk that you're out in the world and maybe you break your leg. Like maybe you could potentially get hurt doing something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest exercise accomplishments I've ever had was I was trying to use the power of my mind to combat asthma, and I had been doing Wim Hof a lot.
Right.
And I had also been smoking a lot of cigarettes, and I always my lungs would be triggered by exercise in cold weather. Mm-hmm. So on a cold night, I decided to go run 4 miles or something.
I remember you telling me about this. Yeah.
I had never run that far before. It was in boots in the snow in the winter. I didn't bring a phone or an inhaler. So I was like, if I have an asthma attack, I'll just die. I had no asthma symptoms whatsoever. Absolutely none. I stayed out extra. Just I'm free. But if I went and jogged right now with my inhaler, I would have asthma symptoms.
Interesting.
So I wonder, did he say anything about in the book about risk triggering, you know how cold showers and the Wim Hof thing, it triggers your physiology to feel like it's in danger? So it really turns your system on. Did he say anything about how danger affects physiology positively? You know?
I don't think he mentioned that specifically. No. But I do like that idea, and I like you bringing that up because I often think that it's true that what you need to do, you do. A lot of times people are capable of things when they have to be that they are not capable of if they did not have to be.
They genuinely physiologically aren't capable, yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a water heater out the other day, and I could tell, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to get stronger, and I'm going to be able to get this out of here, because I'm sick of waiting for it to drain. It still has water in it. It's still heavy. Mm-hmm. But and then Nick's little ass, our supervisor, who's smaller than us, for those who don't know, he just freaking came and he's like, fuck it, and he just yanked it out of there. I was like, I was almost there, dude. I almost got that freaking retards train today. You're so sick of something, and you can't figure out a way to solve it, so you just go, ugh, and you just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I certainly feel that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Spend time in nature. The less constructed and controlled, the better. This has many benefits, among them the dawning recognition that you cannot control everything in your life, and that experiencing discomfort, even the slight discomforts of a too warm day, or rain for which you are unprepared, calibrates your appreciation for other aspects of your life.
That's cool.
I love it.
That's very nice.
Yeah. Be barefoot as often as possible. Calluses are nature's shoes, and they do a far better job of transmitting tactile information to your brain than do shoes. I mean, it certainly seems like, of course, naturally, that's how we would be. Of course, naturally, we would be walking around barefoot. Mm-hmm. But it is shoes are certainly
an adaptation?
An adaptation to our world now.
Right.
Is a big part of it. But I suppose if you're out in nature, then that's going to be better. Or if you're places where it's not going to be a big deal, you should be doing that. Mm-hmm. I don't know how important it is.
What's his point about tactile information?
Meaning, because you have, on the bottom of your feet, you have, nerves. Mm-hmm. So you get information about the feel of the ground. So you get information about whether the ground is cold or warm that you would not get if you were wearing shoes. Mm-hmm. You get information about how wet it is. So tactile information meaning touch information, touch data. Yeah.
But I don't want that data. I want to kill all those nerves over the next few generations, and I want to use that brain power to play VR and shit instead and do other things. And be able to text and drive at the same time. You know what I mean? I got plenty of other shit to sense. I don't care what's going on.
Wear your shoes then. Wear your shoes.
I was going to just keep my shoes. Yeah.
Resist pharmaceutical solutions for medical problems if you can. While antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, and more improve some people's lives, they are often not the best solution. Usually there are alternatives available. Many mood disorders, such as depression, are beginning to be understood by Western medicine to be treatable with diet, ample sleep, and regular activity.
Wow.
Isn't
that crazy to say treatable by a healthy lifestyle? That's not really treatment. That's just pretty much...
That's stop hurting yourself.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's such a complicated question. So I'm not sure if it's advice that I absolutely stand behind, because it's going to be person by person.
Right.
But Yeah, that is their opinion.
That kind of sounds like culture commentary. Like they're just saying, because they're not saying that those medications aren't useful in some situations. They're saying, hey, it looks like what the way that we understand physiology as evolutionary biologists, there is way too great of an emphasis on these medications currently. Because they're not like anti those medications in general,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, they're not.
So they're just kind of doing cultural commentary and saying like, hey, we're doing a little much of this.
And that is certainly true because it's obviously the most profitable way. It is far more profitable
For sure.
to treat it that way than to convince somebody to stop eating McDonald's
Right.
or stop wearing shoes.
Right.
Yeah. Look out for mismatched diseases such as adult-onset diabetes, atherosclerosis, and gout. These are diseases that reflect an inconsistency between one of your environments of evolutionary adaptedness. You get what I mean by that? You get that?
One of your environments of evolutionary adaptedness. No.
So an environment of evolutionary adaptedness would be an environment or a lifestyle, a world that you are adapted to live in. And so he's saying these are diseases that reflect an inconsistency between your environment of evolutionary adaptedness and your current life.
Okay, yeah.
So he's saying you aren't
The life
adapted.
the life that your body is calibrated to, and the life you're actually living.
Right. If you were living in an environment that you were adapted to, you would not have these problems.
Mm-hmm.
They also tend to reflect affluence compared to your evolutionary past. Affluence meaning like success. For at least some of these, bringing your modern behavior closer to that seen in an older EEA could help mitigate the damage. Which is kind of like, I mean, that's kind of like what the whole book is. Like about trying to bring us closer to our EEA than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Consider this informal test to assess certain types of ailments and whether a modern fix is called for. In environments similar to the one I am living in, did people suffer from this ailment prior to modern medicine? If yes, a novel solution is warranted. If no, look to history for the solution. Take rickets as an example. For someone of European heritage living in the Pacific Northwest, did people suffer from rickets in such northern latitudes in the past? One type of answer is that evidence suggests that at least some populations of northern Europeans did not suffer from this condition. Seek answers there. Remember the Vikings and their cod. This refers to an anecdote about how the Vikings, living in an overcast area where they were not getting sufficient vitamin D, would get vitamin D through cod liver. And that was something that they adapted to. They just, I don't know if they understood what exactly was in that or if they just ate the cod liver and was like, ooh, if it felt good, and they just went on doing that. But that was what they were doing in their area in order to deal with the fact that they did not get enough vitamin D.
That is so fascinating that they figured that out.
Yeah. A second type of answer is that the native people in the Pacific Northwest did not suffer from rickets. What worked for them might not work for someone who is not of native heritage, but it well might. Look to geographically local history for solutions. So this is about looking into your past in terms of the area that you're living in, and looking into your past in terms of your heritage and where your ancestors lived.
Mm-hmm.
And look at those things to try and find solutions to your problems. That like there are routes that you can find ways to address problems going there.
Cool.
Yeah. Next chapter is on food, and I think this is the longest one. We might call this section the new kosher. Most ancient dietary laws are now out of date, but that does not mean that we couldn't use some rules about how, what, and when to eat. Shop the edges of the supermarket, meaning the areas with the produce and the meat, because all the refrigerated stuff, I guess, is around the outside. Better yet, buy your food with as few middlemen as possible, as at a farmer's market. Nearly everything from the middle of the supermarket has more sugar, more salt, more umami, which I don't know what exactly umami is, but it's a flavor of some kind. Generally by any means that are not vetted, at least not in the long term. Chewing on sugarcane is to eating refined sugar, as chewing on coca leaves is to snorting cocaine. Highly refined foods, aka highly processed foods, are another example of hyper-novelty, as is plastic, so try to avoid food packaged in plastic, and especially avoid allowing hot plastic to touch your food. Very tough. But he's saying shop locally. Try to shop in fresh ways because like pretty much everything's packaged in plastic at this point. Avoid GMOs. GMOs are neither inherently dangerous nor inherently safe. They are, however, different from the artificial selection that farmers have been engaging in for thousands of years. When farmers choose plants or animals to breed, promoting some traits and down-regulating others, they are playing within the landscape that selection has already been acting on. In contrast, when scientists insert genes or other genetic material into organisms that have no recent history with those genes, they are creating an entirely new playing field. Sometimes they'll be lucky, and the result will be useful and kind to humans. Sometimes they will not be lucky. Chimerical life forms that have been created by humans using hyper-novel techniques are not inherently safe. Anyone telling you otherwise is either mistaken or lying to you. And that is a big narrative, and I suppose that goes very much along with like, don't assume that there is nothing. Don't act like you know that there's no problem. GMOs are. It's odd. We're splicing the DNA of different plants to like make things bigger and juicier, and acting as though there's no chance that bigger and juicier comes with any cons. And that's not necessarily true.
And then a lot of people are acting like anything that's genetically modified is like cancerous. Like we need to avoid GMOs because who the hell has time to figure out what GMO projects are going well and which ones aren't? Like,
right. So they're saying it's best just to stay away from it. Some
now,
of them are probably fine, but we really can't know.
I bet in the future we'll have classifications of genetically modified products where it's like we have some sort of criteria that a food item can pass and say we've been properly scrutinized and these products are genetically modified and do not carry any harmful effects.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, we must have something like that now, right? We must have some kind of rules about...
I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe it's just Wild West. Who knows?
Someone knows.
Respect your food aversions and cravings, especially after exercise, after illness, or while pregnant, so long as those cravings reflect real food and don't pose specific risks. So if you're craving meat, or if you're craving... Well, it's so fucking hard, though, because like that can mean sugar, too. But I suppose what they're saying is, as long as those cravings reflect real food and are not something that are going to be bad for you.
Right. So if you're craving a certain fruit or vegetable or nut or seed or bean or meat or whatever, just go for it. Definitely eat it because your body's asking for it.
Your body's trying to talk to you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the body like has to adapt to situations where they're like, I want to tell you to eat pork, but all you can hear is Cheetos because I need salt. So I ask you for pork, and then it trickles through all these filters that you've built, and all you receive is hot Cheetos. It's like, fuck, I said pork, all I heard was Cheetos. All right, take the hot Cheetos. Eventually we'll just start asking you for Cheetos. You know, you're not going to go.
I know there's no pork in this world anymore, apparently. Expose children to a diverse range of whole foods, especially ones that connect them to your culinary and ethnic background. Eat the same food that you put in front of them and show obvious enjoyment of it. Keep seasonal produce on your counter. That does sound crazy.
They're such nerds. The way that they learn things.
Yeah. Keep seasonal produce on your counter and let the children eat any fruit that they find there, encouraging them to develop their own preferences while they also learn how and when to explore a variety of whole foods.
That's cool. That's a good idea. Like give them free reign to healthy food.
Right. Yeah, let them develop what they think is good. Let them develop their preference. Consider your ethnicity and look to its culinary tradition for a guide to diet. If you're Italian, look to Italian cuisine for clues as how you should eat. If you're Japanese, look to Japanese cuisine. In particular, look to the culinary traditions of home cooking, as the foods represented in restaurants, while often delicious, often represent only a sliver of a culinary tradition's full panoply of options.
Just the most marketable aspects of the...
Just the spaghetti.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do not reduce food to its component parts, such as carbs and fiber, fish oil, and folic acid. Instead, think of food as the species from which it came, the cultures that first used it, the myriad ways it is now prepared and eaten across the world. That's interesting. Do not reduce food to its component parts. Think of food as the species from which it came. So I think they think that it's not the best idea to be doing like multivitamins and things like that to just like break things down into their components and just like try to eat this many carbs and not think about what species those are coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of being like, oh, I get enough carbs, but you eat beans every day, you should be like, oh, I had some beans yesterday, I have some nuts today, I'll have some seasoned oils tomorrow, I'll have some meats and like
right.
More think about the different groups.
More than just the stats matter.
Like more than just the like which micronutrient, like is this fat, protein, or carb or whatever.
Yeah.
Did they emphasize like eating a colorful diet? Did they say anything about that? Because I hear that one a lot. Like different, like there's a correlation between the kinds of nutrients and the colors. You know what I'm talking about? I don't think
they said anything about that. No, okay. About the idea that that colors are varied. You're saying that like the idea that colors are varied to show that the nutrients are varied or something?
Yeah, not necessarily that they evolved for that purpose, but that there happens to be a correlation where, trying to think of an example. No, I can't think of an example. But like, I've seen a chart that has like orange and carrots, and then like it has these, and then like bananas and lemons, and it has these, and it's like, make sure you eat all these different colors because there's a correlation between the colors and the kinds of vitamins and minerals in them.
I've never heard that. No, that's interesting. Make food less ubiquitous in your own world, so like ever present, constantly there. For most of history, human societies have tempered against boom and bust with ritual feast and long periods of frugality. Recently, agriculture has led to an increase in the capacity to hold food in reserve, to save for a rainy day, or, more likely, to save for an extended drought or a harvest failure. While our modern brains want to consume as much as possible, our ancient bodies want to store up for later. When calories were scarce and their availability unpredictable, this metabolic tendency made good sense. When a hunter-gatherer finds honey that he can separate from its bees, he and his friends will likely gorge on it, for there is no knowing when the next burst of sugary goodness will come their way again. But since food resources are no longer scarce, gorging is not an effective strategy, because the scarcity never comes. Instead, we get more opportunities to gorge. We have to willfully override our evolutionary impulses in order not to suffer the hyper-novelty that the 24-hour grocery store provides.
Mm-hmm.
Putting yourself on a schedule, as intermittent fasting recommends, of not eating for regular periods of time seems to be a healthful corrective. So that's the best thing they've come up with in terms of like, we can have whatever we want, whenever we want. We can have it delivered to our house now. We can have someone cook it and bring it to us.
Yeah.
And so you do have to cut yourself off. Yeah.
Have you been trying intermittent fasting?
I have, yeah.
What do you think of it? How many hours a day do you take off eating?
Well, most of the time I end up eating after 8. Like, what I've been doing when I'm doing it correctly is not eating, just eating from noon to 8.
Okay.
So just skipping breakfast, eating lunch, and then eating dinner right after work.
Oh, cool.
And
so for 8 hours, you're allowed to eat, and for 16, you're not.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And when I have done that, it hasn't hurt me. It hasn't really made me feel deprived. I feel like if you skip breakfast, by the time lunch comes around, it's not like you're in debt or anything. It's not really a big deal.
It is for me, but a lot of that is that I just psych myself into thinking that. I just tell myself like, man, I skipped hunger. Man, I skipped hunger. No, opposite. But I'll just think all morning, man, I skipped breakfast. Oh, I sure skipped breakfast this morning.
I do miss it in the morning because I did, before this, always get up and make breakfast typically before work. But by lunchtime, it's like I feel fine.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Do not forget that food is social lubrication for humans. Eating alone in your car after visiting the drive-thru is a novel situation. And it's not helping us connect with our food, our bodies, and their needs, or one another. Eating used to be something that we did together, and it is weird when we eat alone in the car. I remember like one particular, I mean, I'm sure I've done it since then, but I remember one particular time being at Carl's Jr. in the parking lot and being like, what am I doing? And like, I didn't eat at Carl's Jr. for quite a while after that. So I'm eating it like alone in the car. This is not right. Like there was a break room I could be sitting at, but I just wanted to eat it in the car.
I do it pretty often and it never feels good.
It's not good.
Yeah, it never feels good. I
better to
remember a
break bread.
conversation when we were like teenagers and you had your first job and you used to tell me, I think it was your first job. No, it must have been Amazon because you would go to the KFC Taco Bell and you would eat in your car. And I remember you confessing it to me like, I need to tell you, my brother, I've been out sinning. I've been just getting KFC Taco Bell and I just eat it in my car.
Damn, like I felt really bad about it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is because, I mean, usually when I eat in my car, which I do not rarely, it's generally fast food. And so it's the combination of like I'm eating something that I shouldn't be eating and I'm eating it in a way that is, it registers kind of like masturbation. It's like I'm doing something by myself that's not, I mean, I don't know the science of masturbation. I don't think it's like bad for you, but it's like I'm doing something by myself that involves no one, that's meaningless and gives me pleasure. And there's something about meaningless pleasure that just feels really dark.
Right. It's like I get what you're saying with the comparison to masturbation, and that it feels like you're like skipping, like you're just skipping
all the labor.
Fun, like
you're skipping all the labor.
You're skipping the whole story just to like you found the cum button. Or you're skipping the whole thing.
Right. It's like if Lynx found a shortcut and he just went up and snuck up on Ganondorf. He's like, I ruined the whole thing. Like,
which there are speedrunners that do that in 13 minutes.
Really?
Plenty of time. They can beat it in 13 minutes, yeah.
Well, they're losers. But, with masturbation, it's like I was supposed to go through the effort of having to improve myself and convince someone to sleep with me. And it was going to take years.
I was going to have to woo them.
I was going to have to either trick somebody or make myself better. And, now I don't have to do either one. And just there's no effort at all. And same thing with fast food. It's like, I didn't have to chase down a gazelle.
Yeah. Like, porn and fast food are both, like, hijacking systems that are supposed to be used in a more proper way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's supposed to put a reward. It's supposed to put effort before a reward, and the effort on the way to the reward is supposed to improve you. So by the time you get to the reward, you're better than you were when you started.
Right.
It's supposed to be set up that way, but we've just hacked God, and we just...
Yeah, exactly. That's the end of the food one. This one is the whole chapter on sleep.
Awesome.
Allow celestial bodies...
Wait, can I tell you something real quick?
Yes.
I want to tell you a quote that I thought was hilarious. One of my hypnotherapy teachers said, and sleep, don't get me started on sleep. Nobody knows anything about sleep. You want to know how you should sleep? In a tent with a fire in the middle and a chimney going up to the top. Should be cone-shaped. You should be in a circle with all of your grandparents, parents, children, and friends. And you should all face your heads toward the fire. And then she finishes this whole bizarre rant. And she's angry in this rant. She's like, you're all wrong. She's so like lit in this rant. And then at the end she goes, you want to know how I know that? Because we've been sleeping like that for 165,000 years. Why would we stop now? And then she just changed the subject and moved to something else. So I want to tell you that to see if that's going to align with what they say at all.
We'll see. One thing I can think of. Allow celestial bodies to set your sleep-wake pattern. Awake with the sun. Know the phases of the moon. Navigate sometimes by the light of the full moon. Navigate sometimes as dawn emerges or as dusk falls, paying attention to the shifting of your senses as light becomes more or less available. Spend time outside, letting your body take cues from the light of the sun, rather than from the light switch on your wall or the screen you gaze into. So it's better to wake up with the sun than it is like with an alarm. It's a much more natural cycle for us.
Well, we can't all sit around writing books, doing podcasts.
That's true.
We have to wake up at a certain time.
Yeah, we have a job to get to, Bret.
I know you got fired for being a racist, but some of us still have to go to work, Bret.
Get closer to the equator at some point during your winter.
This is fuck
crazy.
do these people want from us?
This one's crazy. Cross the equator and keep going for ever more light during the dark days in your home hemisphere. Especially if you are susceptible to seasonal depression, you probably live relatively far from the equator, such that the winter brings months of darkness in the form of short days and a low sun angle. This advice, of course, comprises a novel opportunity, global travel, that is itself a response to the novelty of living indoors with electric light. When we were in grad school in Michigan, Heather had several good scientific reasons to conduct field research in Madagascar, which is in the southern hemisphere off the coast of Africa between January and April. A lovely collateral benefit of the field work was that she effectively cheated her photoperiod allotment, heading to southern summer when the northern winter was at its darkest. So go to the southern hemisphere in winter. Do that.
I'll work on it. Dude, I'll get right on that. You guys want to all go in on a vacation home on the equator?
Live like a goose.
Step 1, be a goose.
Be a fucking goose. Goose your way away from the winter.
Did they say anything about the light that can supplement the sunlight that you're lacking in winter months? Like there's a false light?
Oh, I don't know. No, that
Okay.
didn't come up. I remember people had those at Amazon sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Which was it's pretty dark.
It is.
These
It is
people
very
sitting
dark
in
to
their
see,
cubicle
yeah.
and they've got like this fake sunlight blaring in their eyes, and it's like, this makes me cheerful.
Oh, because it
God.
was partially to make them appear cheerful on camera, right?
No. Oh shit. Well, you're right. I think they did start handing those out when they started doing that Kindle thing where they had like video chat. But no,
So
I
that
knew-
makes it way darker because it's like, oh, we have these employees, their faces are on camera. We need to blast some light on these people because they look like shit. They're depressed.
Yeah,
Like,
these
we
people
need
are.
to-
I mean, they were in a cubicle in a windowless room.
Dude, we need to give these people some water. Fuck. Our employees are on camera. We need to get some water into these facilities. These people look dry.
We all just drink Diet Coke.
Out of the vending machine in the break room.
They were in the drinking fountains. They're water bottle stations.
And they had all like reusable cups, so it was all progressive and everything.
It was
So you
great.
can drink your Diet Coke with a
It was
reusable cup and
wonderful.
not waste any paper. But I can't remember his name, but I just learned about him because he was a hypnotherapist who coined seasonal affective disorder and also the treatment to it with the little lights. And I thought it did sound really cool. It's like kind of depressing that we have to make that adaptation, but one day we're going to be living in space stations, a lot of us, and like we're going to have to do shit like that. It's like, all right, got to throw the biology a bone and blast some light in my face.
Yeah. Maybe we need to slow down. Maybe that's the message. We need to
Maybe we should go a little slower, yeah.
Maybe we should come up with like a batch of changes per 50 years,
Right.
and then we'll work on how we could best implement those changes in the meantime.
Maybe the government and the aliens are doing that right now.
Maybe,
They're like, hey, we're not
maybe this
dropping-
is the slowed down version. Maybe that's this.
Elon Musk was talking one time about how like hard he works, and he's like, I don't recommend it. Like, it hurts me. It hurts my heart. Like, how much I work. It doesn't feel good. Like, you could tell that his conscience was heavy as he was talking about it. And I'm like, then stop, because we can't. Like, you think we are ready to do Neuralink? We're ready for the Neuralink episode a couple years from now.
Right. Yeah, you're
Like,
gonna hurry up and
dude.
get that ready.
Some of us are still learning to read.
Well, I suppose he
We're
thinks the world's gonna end if he doesn't do this right now.
Oh,
I think
fuck. Every fucking self-important, world-saving guru thinks that. Maharishi, because I'm going to his fucking university, I learned that he would tell people, like, if they don't all move to wherever, Iowa, where our school is located, like, if you guys don't all move to Iowa and meditate with me, the world is going to go to war. Because he was, like, doing a lot of his advocacy and teaching, more teaching than advocacy, I guess, although he was advocating that people move and make a commune with him. But he was doing it when there was like a lot of people stressed out about nuclear war, and so he's like guys, times are tumultuous.
Yeah,
the word, and words too. I don't know why I like to have but he was like, we're going to war if we don't all meditate together because we have to raise the consciousness, and so he would be like moving to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like
and
people
he
like
saved
him
the world. And he saved the world?
Apparently.
Wonderful.
Yeah, apparently. I think it's like 6 million people have learned TM. So apparently that was enough to keep us afloat for now.
We're all good.
And people like him and Musk do, like, they hype themselves up into thinking, like, if I don't do this, everything's fucked. It's like, well, someone else would do it. Because there's a lot of innovation. We talked about this when we covered Cosmos and Psyche. There's a lot of instances of innovation where two people on different sides of the planet come up with the same innovation at the same time. And it's like, we're just at that part of the game where we do that next.
Just naturally, we're going to parallel think because naturally that's what comes next. That's the next idea.
Right. It's not like evolution's happening in one place. It's like, that's the next thing to do. So sometimes I do think like people like Musk are they're doing way too much too fast. It's like, hey dude, if it's stressing you out to revolutionized the world in 4 different ways at the same time. Imagine how we feel.
Right.
Because you're a lot smarter than us.
Imagine if you... I was going to say a joke that I don't want to say. But...
Yeah, you can tell me later. That's fine.
Okay. Avoid caffeine less than 8 hours before bedtime. Children and
8 hours?
8 hours. Children and adolescents are better off with no caffeine at all because of the strongly sleep-disrupting effects and non-reversible effects of sleep deprivation on the developing brain. Similarly, avoid pharmaceuticals as sleeping aids. We don't know what they all do, and we do know they are often disruptive to actual sleep. I think the caffeine thing, that's certainly going to vary on the person. If your tolerance is really high, I don't know that is necessarily true, but I don't know what he knows.
In the Ayurvedic system, which is part of like for those who haven't like tuned in on other shit, there's a bunch of ancient scriptures called the Vedas that are respected in India by Buddhists and Hindus and stuff, and they have a health system called Ayurveda, and they believe that people are constituted of these 3 basic elements that they call doshas, and 2 of the 3 doshas, like if you're dominant in 2 of the 3, you're best off to avoid caffeine entirely. And one of them, it's good for you to have like 100 milligrams of caffeine like an hour after you wake up, something like that.
Interesting.
And so there's at least one medical theory that I know of out there that's like good for some people, bad for others. But I don't know if there's a modern equivalent of a theory like that on caffeine. Like people who have this gene react to it fine. And
no, not that I've heard. I mean, there may be a study on that they're citing, but not that I know of. Go to sleep early enough that you wake without artificial help, with the sun beginning to come in your windows, for instance, rather than with an alarm that bursts into your consciousness and disrupts your dreams. So it goes along with the same thing, but it's just set yourself up to be able to get up with the sun.
Yeah.
Develop a ritual in advance of sleep, just as the spider monkeys at Tikal do. I don't remember the story that he's referring to. It might be a simple...
That was a test. They just made that one up.
See if you're paying attention. It might be as simple as turning lights down low as bedtime approaches, or more elaborate, but a regular series of behaviors can come to signal to your body that it is soon time to sleep.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Spend time outside every day. Sunlight calibrates your sleep-wake cycle far better than artificial light does. So if you're outside, if you're always inside, where there's always the artificial light, you don't know. But if you're outside, then you can see what sun actually is. Some people now, don't... People have days where they don't leave their house at all.
Yeah,
if they work from home, you have no reason to.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, the minority, there's people who don't leave their house for weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
They just order food. And they just work. I think it'd be really cool to have more, glass ceiling bedrooms. I don't see much of that.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
Or just, I guess, sunroofs. Sunroofs even would be better.
Yeah.
Or is that what you call it? Sunlight.
So, you're talking about just, a window? Skylight?
Skylight, that's what it is. Yeah,
just a sunroof is a car.
A ceiling window.
And I couldn't decide to make a car joke. Couldn't think of anything funny. I was like, should I mention a car? He said sunroof. Didn't get anything.
I would have got dunked on.
No, it was skylight. But I think it'd be cool to have a room with multiple skylights. Because skylights are just one little window.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Maybe we'll see more of that in the future.
Keep your bedroom dark while you sleep. This includes removing, turning off, or covering all blue indicator lights from devices. Because even the slightest little, according to them, even the slightest little amount of blue light, that fucks up your cycle.
Did you see Peterson's rant about that recently?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I heard him talk about it when he did that rant when he talked to these guys a few months ago. Is that maybe what you're referring to?
Maybe. He said, these damn engineers are all autistic. They just put blinking lights. They're obsessed with blinking lights.
It was a little weird, yeah.
He got so mad. You saw, his dark side for a second when he, screams at his family in private. He's like, they're all autistic. They put blinking lights on everything. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Throw some tape on it, Peterson.
I think you're referring to his interview with Bret and Heather.
I think you're right. I think that is where I saw
and
it.
They don't really
react.
half
of that interview.
They don't really react
to
the
it.
Subject, they just, they're all autistic. They're obsessed with blinking lights.
Yeah, it was so unnecessary.
I finally bought a router where you can turn the blue light off, for God's sake.
You didn't have any electrical tape, Dr. Peterson?
I totally would do it, yeah. Use a red light rather than a standard one if you read before bed. Whether you are or are not highly susceptible to circadian disruption from medium intensity, blue shifted light in the evenings, there is a good chance that someone in your home is. So they're saying that some people are not as sensitive to it as others, but
Comma
splice.
I thought they were right here. I have blue light glasses, and when I use them for homework close to bed, it makes a huge difference.
Nice.
It's super noticeable, and like now when I don't use them, it kind of feels like a stress in my eyes, like a sharp pain, but very, very subtle. Like a sharp stress in my eyes when I don't use them.
Sarah started using the blue light filter on her phone. You know that
cool.
That's like a setting on a lot of phones. At
least
on
I didn't
hers
know that.
it is, and I don't think she's switched it off since she turned it on.
Mm-hmm.
She just she now feels so much more comfortable looking at her screen, even if it's like a little bit different colored.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure. Because me and Brooke went on a trip for my birthday a couple weeks ago, and we got an Airbnb in the middle of the woods, and there was no sounds and there was no lights, and the quality of sleep was so noticeably different that when we got home, I started trying to make things dimmer when we went to bed. Because we leave on little lamps. We have little Himalayan salt lamps and Scentsy little cute things that we leave on at night. Yeah. And it really makes a difference turning them off.
I do kind of like them, though. Like, I have always liked, I guess, having a little bit of, like, having a nightlight.
Yeah, I've generally liked it, too. But ever since learning about that, I think it was from the episode about this book. And then right after I watched that episode, I went on that trip and slept in the dark, and it felt like, man, I don't even think my dreams are as able to express themselves to me. Like, I don't think my subconscious is able to get a hold of me as easily when I'm dreaming.
Interesting.
When there's just light interrupting me. Like, I was in the dark, and it's like, gosh, I don't even have to close my eyes to start dreaming. Like, it's all just flooding in. It just felt so open.
Right. Yeah, I suppose closing your eyes doesn't matter as much if there's just darkness. Yeah.
When we went to sleep out there, I slept for 12 hours. In that Airbnb, and it's like I laid down to sleep and I didn't even close my eyes yet, and there's already just like images forming, like the dreams just starting to happen. It's like it felt so nice.
Wow.
It felt way more nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I haven't tried, like, I'll try one of these nights, just try turning off every light in the house and seeing how that feels. That'd be fun. Restrict outdoor blue spectrum light at the societal level, particularly lights that shine upward and outward at all hours of the night. Nighttime darkness is healthy. 24-hour light is not, and is even implicated in higher rates of disease. Furthermore, humans deserve a night sky, a sky full of possibilities, sometimes of clouds, often the moon, occasionally planets. My God, these are just so many. Furthermore, humans deserve a night sky, a sky full of possibilities, sometimes of clouds, often the moon, occasionally planets, nearly always stars, and the Milky Way in which we live. Besides sleep, which we need, what else might we lose when we disappear? Our own night sky. That is something I think about all the time. I frequently get like angry at the lack of, the lack of being able to see the stars, because I know there's so many, because when you're out where there's no light, and it's like a clear enough night, you can see so much.
It's overwhelming. It's almost psychologically stressful to look up in the night sky when you have a full night sky. It's overwhelming. It's like makes you feel small. Yeah. Whoa.
This past weekend, me and Sarah tried to go, we were just going to go stargazing. Mm-hmm. And we went, pretty far out of town. And it was just we drove 40 minutes out.
Wow.
And we couldn't see shit. It was
what you need to do is jump off Joe. Just Google Maps jump off Joe, and it'll take you to this random little lookout spot in Findlay. That's the move. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think one thing I thought about too is it is better if you go new moon, because it was close to full moon when we went last weekend, because I think full moon was last night, so it was pretty full. Okay. And that hurts too, because the full moon is pretty bright, and if it's new moon, then you can see the stars a lot better. Good to know.
So I'll probably do that in a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Oh, and it also reminds me, I get furious at the Flash Cube building. Right. For people that don't know, it's a big glass building that's in town around here, and it's got this screen on it. How big is that screen?
12 by 20 feet or something?
Sounds about right. Yeah, this huge screen, and it's It's so bright. You can see it from miles away.
Yeah.
Like, if you can see where it is, like, it's so fucking bright. It ruins everything.
Yeah, miles away for sure.
I fantasize about destroying it.
Yeah, I
Quite a
thought
bit.
about like going there at night and like shooting an arrow at it or something.
I've thought all kinds of things like that. Yeah.
Pretty sure they'd fix it. I think you guys would have to commit domestic terrorism at least 4 times to get that thing to stop. How
4
many
times?
times would they fix it? You could get away with it 4 times though, because there is like, I mean, the radius around there where you could hide and shoot that thing,
Quite a bit.
you can see it from anywhere.
Canyon or ravine there.
Yeah. So we do openly encourage anyone to do that.
If somebody destroyed the Flash Cube building sign and I could afford to bail them out, I'll do that. I don't have a lot of money, though. This is a chapter on sex. Avoid sex without commitment, including sex for hire. Cheapening sex by seeking it everywhere and at all times renders it more difficult to form a stable bond with one individual, which is the best predictor of a relationship of equals, in which neither partner feels chronically subservient or undervalued. Instead, seek ecstasy and passion, which are more consistently discovered with someone whom you know well and who knows you well. Good advice. For straight women, do not succumb to social... Why does it phrase that way specifically? Do not succumb to social pressure to embrace easy sex. If you aren't interested in sleeping with a guy within hours or days of meeting him, and he passes you by for someone who is, what have you lost? You have lost access to a guy dedicated to strategy 3. You are better off looking for a good guy who is capable of, and interested in, refusing to act on his basest impulses. The strategy 3 that she's referring to there, because I guess I'm assuming that's Heather talking in that one. But the strategies are it's strategies for reproduction. Strategy 1 is you try and find a partner, you pair up, and you try to raise a kid. You try to make and raise a kid. Strategy 2 is rape. Strategy 3 is trying to trick someone or just easily convince them in a way that you are uncommittal to, like, try and impregnate someone in an uncommittal way, basically. Yeah. But not rape.
So the rape is talking about strategy 2. It's talking about people just going out and raping random people, like that they don't know. It
is speaking more broadly about life forms in general. So it's not just referencing people. It's like these are the ways that creatures approach reproduction.
Right.
Either you pair up, you rape, or you try and have sex in a non-committal way, and then you dip.
Right.
Yeah. Keep children far away from pornography. Try to keep yourself away from it as well. The market should not be allowed to intrude on several things, including but not limited to love and sex, music, and humor. So at the end there, they're saying like that pornography is more and more in our culture becoming a part of other fields of entertainment as well. And that like hypersexualization is bleeding into other places, and we should be careful to not let
like
that
we
be
call
a thing.
something a horror movie, but really it's an excuse to see boobs at a movie theater.
Right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like horror is like
it's
somehow
supposed to be
super
scary.
associated with sexuality in a weird way. And what's that
Right.
about? Why is that?
Ask Freud. I don't freaking know.
Something about
Or
moms.
ask Peterson to rant about Freud.
Do not interfere with children's development by trying to block, pause, or radically alter their development. Gender is the behavioral expression of sex, and so is both a product of evolution and more fluid than is sex. Childhood is a time of identity exploration and formation. Children's claims to be the sex that they are not should therefore not be indulged as anything beyond normal play and searching for boundaries. While actually intersex individuals are real and incredibly rare, and actually transgendered people are also real and very rare, much of modern gender ideology is dangerous and contagious, and many of the interventions, hormones, surgical, are not reversible.
Nice. I really want to read, have you heard of Irreversible Damage?
I believe so. Is that the book where the writer was on Rogan talking about
Oh, I didn't know she was on Rogan. That's cool.
I think.
But yeah, she was
we're talking about the
describing
same
like
person.
yeah, she's describing like historically the rates of transgender. Like there's always 3 in 1,000 people or so are going to have such a unique gender and sex situation that you got to just let them do what they're going to do, and then you see when it becomes a cultural trend and it increases by like 4,000% or just something totally crazy, and it's like it's
and
all
how often that leads to regret.
Right.
Wanting to like wishing that they hadn't done it.
Right.
And
I think that's what irreversible damage is about. Like now
Yeah.
we're at the point where that party is over and it's like 4:30 in the morning and everyone's waking up and they're like, fuck.
Right. And that was not received very well by a lot of people.
Right.
Because it's not, that's like, she's casting stigmas or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's actually defending legitimately transgendered people's right to exist without being attached to trendy ideologies. It's
Totally.
like, no, we're going to separate you. You don't like this. Every blue-haired teenager does not represent transgender people. Like,
Yeah.
No, you go do your thing and they're transgender and you're going through a weird phase and they're really that. You leave them alone. You're making them look stupid.
Yeah.
It's really about defending transgender people.
Because I'm sure that those people that are really sincerely in their hearts, like, feel different in the same way that people have always felt different.
Right.
I'm sure it's really annoying for them
Yeah.
that, like, oh, you're trans? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's
Now I gotta
frustrating.
vote for Biden because I have a weird gender situation. I don't want to play.
Yeah. Keep contaminants away from fetuses and children. In several species of frogs, there is an established relationship between exposure to common environmental contaminants, like atrazine, a herbicide, and an increase in hermaphroditic individuals. They're referring to the same thing Alex Jones refers to when he says
What?
they're putting chemicals in the water to turn the freaking frogs gay.
What?
It's a very real thing. There's been like areas where there's like chemical runoff and the frogs will either get confused about what gender they are or they will become hermaphroditic. Like there's a lot of different reactions
Right.
that they can have. But then you end up with 2 male frogs that both think they're female humping each other. And so it's more like they're turning the freaking frogs trans is like in more cases the truth.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was a very real thing he was referring to and they're referring to it
And
here.
testosterone has been cut in like half since, what is it, the 70s?
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, it's dropped a medically dangerous extent.
Yeah.
And I do get curious about things like that.
Yeah.
Insert conspiracy theory here. That's for another episode.
Oh yeah, that's for Alex Jones.
We'll read one of Alex Jones' textbooks.
I'd read it.
We'll read journalist Alex Jones, what he has to say about it.
Recognize that our differences contribute to our collective strength. If we more highly valued work that women are more likely to be drawn to, example, teaching, social work, nursing, perhaps we could stop demanding equal representation of men and women in fields that women are simply not as likely to be interested in. Recognizing that we are, on average, different is the critical first step to building a society in which all opportunities are truly open to everyone. Equal opportunity is an honorable goal in step with reality, whereas aiming for equal outcome, in which every occupation, from daycare workers to garbage collectors, has equal representation between the sexes, will disappoint everyone involved. Very
For
true.
sure. But their wording is kind of weird when they say that the genders are on average different. I think it seems like the liberals right now are saying men and women need to be the same or things aren't fair. But then the conservatives are saying they're completely different. They need to be like completely different. But in reality, it's like we're mostly the same because we're humans, and
Yeah.
then we just have small definitive differences. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because it sounded like they were saying like men and women on average are mostly different. I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but it
Yeah.
sounded kind of funky.
Recognizing that we are, on average, different is the critical first step in building a society in which all opportunities
Okay,
are
that
truly
doesn't really
open
make
to
sense.
everyone.
We are on average different.
I guess you get what they mean, though.
Yeah,
right?
the average man and the average woman have definitive differences. Is that
Yeah.
what they're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Now,
cool.
there's
yeah, that does agree with what I'm saying.
Okay.
then.
Yeah, totally. Next chapter is on relationships. Take time to grieve in a way that feels right to you. In the middle of the deepest, earliest grief, sometimes you will be joyous, and sometimes you will not be thinking about the one whom you have lost. It ebbs and flows, loses some of its power over time, but never disappears entirely. No matter what, honor your memories and your inclinations. Spend time with the body of your loved one after they die. Those who have lost loved ones to situations from which their bodies could not be recovered often suffer from prolonged periods of grief. When we view our dead, sit with them, and talk with them, we set a foundation upon which our grief, our neural recalibration, can be moored.
Interesting.
It is very interesting. I never really thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I think every time that I've lost someone that I was very close to, I got to see the body.
Me too.
I suppose I'm only thinking of two people in particular, but
yeah,
I got to see
Anthony Hayden
and
Brooke's dad. We were able to do a viewing.
Yeah,
and I do like it.
Yeah,
because you look at the body and you're like, it's so pale and it's so cold, and you can see that this was particularly with Brooke's dad with Don. It didn't look like his personality was there. I'm like, that's just a body. I don't see his face doesn't even look the same because there's not the same soul animating it. It's like, he's not in there.
Yeah. So it's like I checked for his personality. It wasn't there.
Right. Yeah. It looked like you it looked like you took the thing that animates the face out of the face, and then it was just a blob of flesh. We didn't recognize him. Like if you didn't tell me it was Don, I would have thought it was just a random old white guy.
Right.
So weird because the animator wasn't there.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thought. I never thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
This one I think is crazy. Turn the sound down on your conversations and watch the actions. Act like an animal behaviorist, especially when interpreting interactions between you and your romantic partner. Much can be learned about the actual emotions in play when you stop listening to words and start watching behavior.
I actually like that. I do.
But what if you're talking to Brooke and you're just like kind of looking at her, but you're just, and then you're like, sorry, I was watching you like you were an animal. I was not listening to you. I was watching you like an animal. And I understand your mood, but I don't know what you said. Like I don't know how in practice you would do that.
Okay, I think
you won't hear them.
I think here's what they're saying. They said turn down the volume, not turn off the volume. So I think what they're saying is make the unconscious aspects of dialogue more conscious by respecting the ratio of verbal and nonverbal communication in a way that's more accurate. So like the verbal and nonverbal communication, it's something like 7 to 93%. Like 93% is nonverbal, but that includes tone. That's considered nonverbal. It's not like the actual word, non-language or whatever. Like 7% is the words, and then the other 93% is the tone and the inflections and the body language and the context and everything else. So I think they're saying turn the words down to the 7% that they're supposed to be, because we treat the words like they're 80%, 50%.
Yeah.
When we're supposed to treat them like they're like 10 and pay attention to everything else more.
And I think that's a better way to look at it. But they do say much can be learned about the actual emotions in play when you stop listening to words and start watching behavior.
Yeah, they are nerds.
They're big nerds.
They're big nerds, and they word things
Imagine
like
they just watch each other.
They do,
though. They're like talking to each other.
I'm sure
they
do. I don't think they even talk. I don't think that they talk. I think they have a bunch of caveman props in their house, and they just play with their props, and they just observe each other.
They hide berries for each other, and they say, "No, go gather," and then they run barefoot around their house.
I'm sure they role play sexually a lot. I'm sure they role play sexually constantly. And pretend
sometimes
to be animals.
Sometimes you gotta fight them. You gotta get through them to the berries.
Wait, what?
No.
Is that sexual role play?
That's what I was. That's what I was. Where you were going.
I wasn't gonna have them rape each other.
It wasn't. It's conquest. You don't understand evolutionarily.
Oh. Okay.
Moving on. Be an animal behaviorist.
Do you think they're like strategy 2 tonight? All dark.
Oh God. It's a rough night. Be an animal behaviorist on your own emotional state as well. That I like better. And recognize that if you have contempt or disgust or persistent anger for someone with whom you are in a relationship, these feelings are incompatible with love. I do like the idea of like watch yourself like an animal. That is a good idea. And like watch your moods and how often you are swayed by moods and that sort of thing. I like that approach better.
I like their word state. We used the word state a lot in an NLP class that I took today as part of the Hypno program. And NLP is about like trying to reprogram the way that your brain thinks so that it behaves differently. And they have put a huge emphasis on state. Like you have control of your state. And so like that, then you need to factor that into goal setting. Like you have a goal, you want to get this because you think if you get this, you'll have this state. Like you can just do that state now. You can just become that state. That's a different point than the point they're making. But I like how he said like pay attention to your state. Yeah, I feel like that might be even deeper than mood.
Yeah, I do think they mean more than just mood. Yeah. I think they mean a lot more than that. Definitely. Avoid dating apps, if you can. In a world full of billions, in which city dwellers interact anonymously with people every day, dating apps may be a good way to sort through a nearly infinite number of choices. The risks are many, though, including that seeing so many possible partners may make you less interested in going deep with any individual. In such a sea of opportunity, is it also possible to become a perfectionist, to get the sense that the perfect one must be out there, if you just keep swiping long enough. Best to have real-life interactions early and often in any relationship that you think might be worth developing. Seems sane.
Yeah, it seems like everybody knows that's a problem.
Yeah. Encourage allo-parenting of your children, meaning asking friends to watch it, like sharing parent responsibilities with others.
Yeah.
By grandparents, older siblings, friends. If you have only adult women or only adult men in your household, an allo-parent of the opposite sex stands to be particularly beneficial for your children.
That's cool.
Breastfeed your infants if you can. Adults who were breastfed have better formed palates and better aligned teeth compared to those who were bottle-fed. And breast milk has in it all manner of nutrients and information that we do not understand. It may, for instance, contain cues with which the infant entrains his sleep-wake cycle. Thus, if you do breastfeed and also pump milk to feed the baby at other times, feeding your baby milk that was pumped at the same time of day as it currently is could be helpful in getting your baby to sleep when you want him to.
That's crazy.
That is really interesting.
They read what time it is.
Right.
Off
so
of milk.
Because the chemicals in the milk is slightly different depending on the time of day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's a really interesting idea.
There's got to be so many physiological systems that we don't even know anything about yet. You know, in situations like that. It seems like I'm not an expert on the circadian rhythm. I've learned a little bit about it in school, but I'm assuming we understand it pretty deeply. But there's got to be physiological systems we don't even know yet.
Totally.
That are just at such a fine scale that we don't even know how it impacts.
And that's a lot of what they're talking about. It's just like there's a lot we don't know. So like actually the last sentence of that breast milk thing was, put another way, beware Chesterton's breast milk. Like don't do away with it just because you can't see the point of it. Yeah. This chapter is on childhood. Do not expect your children to keep up with the Joneses. Some developmental delays are indeed delays and indicative of physical or neurological problems. But development is wildly plastic and doesn't always happen. Plastic is a term they use to mean like flexible. In the order you expect it to or at predetermined moments. Don't panic if your kid isn't reading in the 2nd grade. The chances he's going to grow up to be illiterate are slim to none. Earlier is not necessarily better. Early walkers, talkers, or readers do not inherently become more adept, smarter, or more productive adults. So don't trip if they're behind the checkpoints. Encourage active engagement with the physical world. Do this mostly by modeling it, also by making opportunities and, to some extent, toys that make it easy and fun available. Allow mistakes. Expect accidents, falls, minor injuries. Be prepared for the possibility of larger injuries. Remember that people do not learn exclusively from being told what others have learned, especially physical truths. They have to have the close calls themselves. It's very true. Do not let inanimate objects babysit your children, especially if those objects are masquerading as animate ones. So I think largely they're referring to things like TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's mostly tablets these days, I think, for
True.
little kids.
Right, because then they can touch it, and they got a thing to touch, and they can pick stuff.
Right, and they just, the whole situation fits in a corner. Like my kid and his babysitter, the whole situation fit in a corner. I don't even have to give him the living room or anything. I can just tuck him and something to look at away in a closet.
And he can put his babysitter in the backpack and carry it with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do let children play without adult supervision as early and often as possible. This includes in-game and sports situations where there are established rules. Consistently follow through on your promises, both positive and negative. Don't make a threat. Example, if the screaming continues, I'm going to take away your toy, and then not follow through. Better not make such threats in the first place. But if you do make them, and we all do, sometimes, make sure you deliver. Expect that static rules will get gamed. Becoming an adult is, in part, about learning what the system is, where its weaknesses are, and how to take advantage of those weaknesses. Children learn this in the system that their natal home provides. Make honorable systems, listen to children when they have grievances, take them seriously from an early age, but do not pretend to them or yourself or anyone else that yours is a friendship rather than a parent-child relationship. Stop manipulation every time it starts. Do not helicopter or snowplow your children. Let them make their own mistakes. At the same time, make clear rules. One that we set was this. You are allowed to break an arm, a leg, a wrist, an ankle, but you may not break your skull or your back or impair your senses. This allowed our children a sense of what kinds of risks were acceptable to take, and also what kind of plans B, C, D, and so on they need to have to protect their brains and central nervous systems above all else. I liked that one. I think that's an interesting idea.
It is. I feel like I'm listening to like aliens explain how to raise your kids, but I like it because I mean, hey, you might break a leg, but you'll be fine if you break your leg.
You survive that.
Yeah.
But wear a helmet. But don't wear knee pads. You don't have to be a dork, but wear a helmet.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not spoil your children. Instead, give them responsibilities early on. A child who is catered to constantly comes to expect it, and is destined to be both dissatisfied with the world beyond his natal home and unwilling and likely unable to do much for himself.
Yeah.
Let your children in on almost every conversation. Reward your children's inquisitiveness with conversation, and don't dumb ideas down for them. Obviously, there are some things that are inappropriate at various development stages and ages, but what you personally decide is appropriate and when will vary by person. But in general, assume that your child is smart and can handle the content of an adult conversation. So, like, if your baby daddy is being a dirtbag, like, make sure that your kids know about that and that they understand that it's because he doesn't care.
So, in that one, I was thinking about... Oh, so he said, don't dumb things down, and I liked that, because the first thing I thought was, well, you need to dumb things down because kids don't understand certain things. And then I realized, no, you actually need to just give them the full explanation and just let them pick up what they can.
Yeah, let them think about that.
Let
and go
them
like, this
dumb it
doesn't,
down themselves.
Let it hurt their head for a second, and then they'll move on and maybe come back to it later if they want to try and get it again.
Well, like, Peterson talks about how religion is true at various levels of analysis. He's like, it's so true. It's true at different levels of analysis. And so if you think of, so on the show Euphoria, there's this guy who's like a really likable Mac Miller kind of half thug, but like tougher and dumber.
Okay.
Super likable character. And he's talking to a girl at a party. And he says, she says, you believe in God? And he says, hell yeah, I believe in God. And she goes, so you really think there's a man in the sky judging everything that you do? And he goes, hell yeah. It's so funny because that's the classic line where then you go, no, it's more complicated than that. It's not a guy in the sky. It's something that's within you. And you're supposed to give some deep answer.
Yeah.
But he's correct. Like, yeah, if all you can get out of the story is that there's a man in the sky judging you, then that's exactly where you should be. Yes, please behave well. There's a man in the sky judging you. When you're ready to graduate to a deeper understanding of that same truth, you will. But like so I kind of took that with the kids. Like give the kid the full answer. And it'll be true at whatever level of analysis he automatically dumps it down to.
Right.
When he hears you say it.
Right.
He'll get something true out of it. You'll say, something about atoms and quantum fields and whatever. And he's like, so basically the universe is made out of complicated little stuff? Absolutely. That's, dead on.
Good enough. I'm moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let siblings and friends teach each other, and don't intervene whenever they have a disagreement or altercation. If they ramp up their arguments so that you have to get involved, don't reward such behavior. They should be resolving their own disputes as early as possible. I like that. Like, let kids, even if they're wrong, even if they're teaching each other, like, incorrectly, don't jump in.
Right,
like,
it's not necessary.
Just let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let them talk and let them learn with each other.
Like when you came home from school and told me that a circle has 200 corners. I figured it out.
It has 360.
That's not what you said. We've had this conversation 10 times. You did not tell me it has 360.
We don't have time.
You're right. We're running out of time. I'm sorry.
I did say that. I don't know where I got that from. Maybe I was referencing pixels. I don't know.
Corners, but we
know. Let your children sleep. Sleep plays a crucial role in brain development, and when synapses, the connections between neurons, are being generated at a very high rate, sleep expands in scope as well.
Nobody on Earth is trying to stop their children from sleeping, so you can definitely just move on.
Yeah.
Come on, stay awake, hang out.
Don't succumb to dominant parenting expectations. Most of them are silly, at best unnecessary, at worst actually harmful. Listen to your own self, and don't let parental peer pressure get you doing things that you take issue with, or that feel wrong for your children. Examples might include constant playdates, scheduling lots of meetings and lessons. Do not make a habit of displaying your children on social media. Shout out to Sean and Kalia, who they have been very careful about that, actually. They barely put Oakley on Facebook at all. They don't share a lot of pictures of her at all.
Why?
Kalia says the whole idea of it makes her uncomfortable. I think she's concerned about the technology and how that's just giving the machine more data and strangers that you don't know more data about your kid that isn't necessary. It's not the world's business. So they've been really careful about that the whole time with Oakley.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Some people write about their children's diseases, on Facebook. About their disorders.
Sure. There's lots of that. Yeah.
Give your child some privacy, please.
Right.
Steve Lee posts a close-up picture of his daughter's face with exactly what she learned that day, every single day. And I always think that it's great. It always just something sane on Facebook.
Yeah.
He gives all data on his baby. There's probably things that he keeps private, but it's I know his kids. And, I've never met his kids.
Right.
But, I know them. I know what they learned when,
Yeah.
One of them, I think it was Zuzu, said Dada the other day. It's I know that.
Well,
Zuzu
nice.
said Dada to Steve. And it always strikes me as really nice. What do you think about the, risks of it? Or what did they say about
I'm
it?
inclined to agree. I agree. I've thought about it as, what I think about is, if they post pictures of Oakley, everything you post is all data that is valuable for better selling to you. Mm-hmm. And any data that is posted about Oakley on the internet now is data that is going to be used to sell to her later. If Kalia posts when she started getting her first tooth, that could be valuable for dental advertisements. It's just... Mm-hmm. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that all our data is being we think we're getting a good deal, but actually all our data is being used to try and get more money out of us,
which is going to make our lives worse. It's about exploiting us,
yes.
Getting money out of us for probably a bunch of shit that we don't need.
Right.
And but we make the choice to put our data on those platforms.
Right.
Oakley and Zuzu don't.
Yeah, Oakley
they don't know
what
where their data is going. So maybe it's best to just let them get to the age where they can choose how much of their data to put online.
Yeah.
That's definitely sound thinking.
And I think there's also an aspect of there are creeps on the internet. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's also part of where they're at as well with it. Like,
Right.
I don't know how much I don't know everybody that's on the internet. I don't know that I want them to have a ton of pictures of my kid. That's not really any of their business. Why should it be on the internet? They're my pictures of my kid.
Right.
Yeah.
I still mostly disagree because like with Oakley, for example, they have like 2,000 pictures of Oakley on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And so Google already pimped out that data to every hostile foreign nation and evil corporation on the planet, you know? And so like all they're doing now is like depriving their friends and family of pictures of a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at least to an extent that's true but I don't know that if you give out, because I imagine they are being like, they're probably like not even using cloud. I'm not sure. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of data, like the amount of pictures that they have, I think they almost definitely have a cloud.
Yeah, very possible. But even if Google does have all that information, and even if that is all still being commodified, it doesn't mean that by posting it online, more companies that are less connected, because it's not all one company yet. Like there could be smaller, less connected companies that also are trying to get as much data as they can for their own advertising purposes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're still restricting some companies from getting her data.
Right.
But I get pictures of Oakley anyway because we're in the group chat. So
yeah,
that's fine.
Still counts. I don't know. Why does he still count? You still get pictures. That's what I mean.
Well, what you did was you inserted a random phrase to segue and change the conversation. You know, the phrase didn't apply.
You got it. You got it.
Well, takes one to know one.
Provide ample free time for your children and, if possible, allow them to explore unwatched during that time. Many moderns, however, live in situations that do not allow for this. They call people in the modern world. They call them moderns.
These people are creeps, dude.
They're a little weird.
This is a couple of gray aliens talking about human behavior.
Right. It's like they've never listened to anyone and they've always been watching us like animals.
Moderns. Dude, there's some kids here at the complex that have just been running around raising hell playing, and it brings me so much joy because they just run around and make shit up, or they just pick something up and then drop it.
I totally know what you're talking about. They'll like yell like, "No, I'll be you sacrifice for me." And it's like
Then I'll tag you.
They've got this like elaborate story about like someone's being sacrificed to like let the hero go on. Like,
so
I know
that they're like 20 chapters into a story that they all improvise together.
Yeah, there's a story.
And now they know how to link up with another human being and make up something together and see where it goes.
Yeah, but they're still very loose. They're like, so you sacrifice to save him, and they're like still making it up. It makes me laugh a lot when I hear them.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. The story's all over the place. I was talking shit to those kids the other day because we were like, we knocked over somebody's barbecue grill when we were trying to drop a hose down to drain a water heater, and the kids were like, "You just dropped their grill," and we're like kind of talking smack, and I accused them of dropping the grill, and then one of them found my keys on the ground. And they're just running around unsupervised. Yeah. And they're, like, those kids are all set. Like, they know how to socialize properly. Like, they're fine. Like, every job that they go to, every school that they go to, they're going to be fine because they know how to just bullshit with people and just make an interaction happen out of nothing. Yeah. So they'll always be able to make an interaction happen out of something. Yeah. They can do it out of nothing. It's like, I'm so happy for those kids. They just run around unsupervised and play.
And then there's a bunch of, like, dumb old moderns that are looking at them like, God, these kids, these are like the unruly kids. These are bad kids. Right. These are kids that are going to be useful. Yeah,
those are going to be useful people.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. They're going to get together and figure out problems. Like, they're going to solve problems.
Yeah. Be the kind of person you want them to become. Monkey see, monkey do. Don't be surprised if your children eat processed food and ask to buy things at every store, if that's what they see you doing. Can I have how many? That's hilarious. Can I have how many things can I have?
You can get one thing, something small. Come back with a soda. Okay.
How are we doing on time?
1 hour and 35 minutes.
Wow. Okay. I have 4 more chapters left. does it matter if this goes really long? Should I just keep going?
I don't care if anybody watches this for a minute, let alone the whole thing.
Okay.
Do as much as you want.
You cool, Evan? You keep going? All right.
Let's get on batteries and
Sweet.
space.
This is a chapter on school. School, and obviously parents, should teach children respect, not fear, to honor good rules and question bad ones. All people run into bad rules, whether in the legal system, at home, at school, or elsewhere. If you're a parent, strive to show your children that you are 100% on their team, no matter the trouble they've bumped up against. Children should be free to ask why their parents' rules are what they are, but also know that it is counterproductive to break the rules simply for the sake of breaking them. To get out of their comfort zone and explore new ideas. You will likely learn the least in exactly the areas where you are most certain of what you already know, whether or not what you think you know is actually accurate. So, school should teach children to get out of their comfort zone and explore new ideas.
I don't like how much they use the word actually. They usually just randomly throw the word actually in the middle of a sentence. Doesn't really add anything. Which one of them is the actually person?
Sounds like something Bret would say. He's an actualer.
Actually.
Yeah. Actually. The value of knowing something real, or school should teach children the value of knowing something real about the physical world. When you have a sense of physical reality, you are less likely to be gameable by the social sphere. Never accept conclusions on the basis of authority. If you find that what you are being taught does not match your experience of the world, do not acquiesce. Pursue the inconsistencies.
Dope.
School should teach children what complex systems actually look like, even if the messiness of those systems is beyond the scope of the lesson. Nature is an example of such a system. Nature provides, among other things, a corrective to the ideas that emotional pain is equivalent to physical pain, and that life is or can be made perfectly safe. Exposure to complexity is key. Higher education, in particular, should recognize that civilization needs citizens capable of openness and inquiry. These should therefore be the hallmarks of higher ed. The need for nimble thinking, creativity in both the posing of questions and the search for their solutions, an ability to return to first principles rather than rely on, mnemonics and received wisdom. I'm not sure what mnemonics is. M-N-E?
M-N-E
mnemonics.
No clue. I've never heard that in my life. Evan's on it, though.
And received wisdom. These are ever more important as we move forward in the 21st century. A misunderstanding of how work will look in the future is driving people to specialize earlier and more narrowly. Higher ed is the natural place to counteract that trend and push towards greater breadth, nuance, and integration. Students of traditional college age today cannot accurately predict what their career will look like by the time they are 70, 50, 30. College is where breadth should be inculcated. Did you find the mnemonics?
Yeah, like a mnemonic device, like a saying that helps you remember like a word, like
No, but it's M-N-E monic.
Well, that's what it's saying here. I typed in M-N-E. That's basically what it's saying.
Interesting.
The device such as a pattern of letters, ideas, or associations that assists in remembering something.
Okay. All right. So the need for nimble thinking, creativity.
Wait, sorry. While we deal with that, can you look up inculcated, please?
Inculcate?
Unless you know.
Not really.
Yeah.
Instill by persistent instruction.
Okay.
Instill an attitude or idea.
Okay. All right. Now we can read it.
The need for nimble thinking, creativity in both the posing of questions and the search for their solutions. An ability to return to first principles rather than rely on mnemonics and received wisdom. So, I guess it's just like relying on easy ways to... don't rely on easy ways to remember things. Rely on being able to think.
Musk talks about this a lot. Like, he's like, for example, if you're trying to design a rocket, you can't just say, how do we make batteries? And just go, okay, that's how we make batteries. So we got that. Okay, now how do we do this? Like, no. What is a battery? It's this element, and this element combined in this way. Okay, now what's the cheapest way to get each of those elements? He breaks everything down to its to its simplest principle he can
Mhm.
and innovates from that point instead of just taking each chunk of already established information as each as a given and then putting those chunks together. He's like, no, we're going to do each chunk from the ground up.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what it's talking about. Like, don't just...
I think you're dead on. I think you're dead on. I think that what they're saying, I think that when they say first principles, they're referring to like what you really, really know is true about this field. And when Elon asks, how do we make a battery? And someone says, you make a battery like this. He'd be like, okay, wait. But like, what do we really know about batteries? Like, what do we really know about how you make it? Let's go way back, not just assume that it's been done the best way already.
Right.
Yeah. A university cannot simultaneously maximize the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of social justice. As Jonathan Haidt has famously noted, this is a basic trade-off and unavoidable. It becomes important then to ask what the purpose of a university is. Is it necessary that we focus on the pursuit of truth? Yes, in fact it is. Totally true. It can't... Yeah. If like making sure that everybody is comfortable is your goal, you just can't have more than one priority.
The term social justice it's so unfortunate how limiting it is. Like it's obviously it is more socially just to say the truth than just like, for example, if you were going to say if you were in a college class and you go, oh, the races behave differently, and you go, blacks are on average more late than whites, and then someone would go, wait, that's a stereotype. It's like, wait, this is a sociology class. We're just telling the truth.
Sure. Yeah.
Wait. Which one is this? It's like, well, it's not. So the social justice perspective would say you can't say that black people are late more than white people. It sounds weird. That's what they would say. And then the truth types would go like, well, there's some other trade-off. It's not like they're worse. There's just people are different.
Right.
And so it's not socially just to cover up random truths because they don't align with...
I see what you're saying, yeah.
...with so-called social justice ideologies. So social justice is not social justice. It's, it obviously makes things... Social justice obviously makes things socially less just. And so it's just a really, unfortunate terminology because it's just saying like, hey, you can pursue truth, but only within these boundaries. Like, you can't say anything that offends anyone who thinks this way. It's like, well, that's not socially just. So it's not really social justice.
Right.
And it's really unfortunate to hear Jonathan Haidt have to say, because he's a liberal, he is a moral psychologist, he's an academic with integrity. And it's so unfortunate to hear him have to say truth and social justice contradict each other. Like, that's because that's a false statement. Because truth creates justice in the social level of life and all others.
Right.
And so it just sucks that he has to say it that way. I get what he's saying, but he has to say something false to try to make a point. It's
right.
just so frustrating.
Because, like, for what he's saying to be true, like, social injustice would maybe have to be capitalized. Like, social justice as a movement, as we understand it in the context of America, like, that and truth are incompatible. But true social justice should be the same thing.
Truth and social justice should naturally be aligned. Right.
Yeah, lowercase. Just the words. Just interpreted literally. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
It is unfortunately that words get like taken like that. And now they own social justice.
Yeah, an ideological movement trademarked that phrase. And now you can't, like, I mean, if let's say a Christian's going out there and what they're doing is picketing against abortion and gay marriage. That's a social justice movement. They're trying to make the social sphere of life more just by pointing at things they don't like.
Yeah.
And then leftist materialists are doing the same thing. They're going out there and pointing at things that they don't like.
Right.
So those are both social justice movements. They're both trying to make things socially more just.
Yeah.
None of that's productive.
Yeah. They just don't agree about what justice is.
Right.
Yeah.
What should happen socially for things to be just? Well, first things first, abortion and gay marriage, or first things first, racism and gender equality or whatever. It's like,
Totally. Social risks, intellectual, psychological, emotional, must be taken, but doing so in front of strangers is particularly difficult. Both small class sizes and extended time together building community are correctives to anonymity.
Oh, very cool.
So this goes along with the way that they taught in a school.
Right.
That like, because they had such close relationships with these people, with the students in their class, they became very comfortable with each other to the point where someone could ask them any question. Where they talked about how like students would feel comfortable talking about really, really dark topics, like rape or things like that. And it was just someone could, they really instilled the idea that like your ideas are not you. You can attack an idea, but you can dislike an idea, but don't dislike the person for having it or for just asking a question.
Right.
And they really developed that sort of relationship with their students. So that's very important to them.
That's really cool.
One thing they said that was interesting was like they get asked like, are you interested in returning to teaching? And for them, it's like, they don't even know what returning to teaching would be because they taught at Evergreen and clearly they're not allowed there anymore. And they had a wonderful experience.
I think they will
at
be
Evergreen.
in a few years. I think
Maybe.
I think it'll come around. Their views are aligned with Evergreen. They should be at Evergreen.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they should be. That's their home.
Yeah.
These are progressive teachers who want to teach in a novel environment. That's where they should be. And it'd be really beautiful if they ended up back there. And I don't think it's like out of the question because it seems like there was like a flare up of I guess you call it violence.
Yeah, it was violence.
Ideological leftists, and it feels like it's on the downturn. Like everybody, there's a lot built up, and everybody needed to throw a fit for a few years, and it feels like it's chilling out.
Yeah, they could be legally unable to return there because they did end up suing Evergreen and did end up getting a significant settlement.
Gotcha.
And
that's tricky.
we don't know exactly what that was or what the conditions of it were, so it might be that they just are not allowed to. They'd
probably just launch an online learning platform anyway.
Well, what they recently started, the University of Austin. They're involved in that.
Are they?
That.
Oh, that's so funny.
That what is it? What's the word? This
pursuit of truth. Pursuit of truth. Unbridled.
No. I'm the thing. There's a body that says this is a real college. There's a group that says
accrediting body.
Yeah, it's an unaccredited college.
They don't even have degrees yet.
No.
Yeah, but like
they're not able to
next year or something. Well, you can have it. You can offer a degree that's not accredited. They don't even have unaccredited degrees yet.
Do they not have a printer?
I don't think they have like classes yet. Like they're just building it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
They haven't even really done anything yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
But like I looked it up. So I'm like, oh, maybe maybe they'll have some degree that'd be interesting. Maybe they're gonna do, I don't know. They had. The degrees that they were offering were so weird. I was like, I'm getting out of here. It's like entrepreneurial social engineering or something. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude. I'm going home.
Yeah, they're making like Joe Rogan University in Austin. Yeah,
they are, but it's not. I would think that a university like that would have really practical subject areas. Like, because you got schools like the school that I'm going to, Maharishi, and like CIIS and Atlantic and all these schools that they just make shit up. We have a degree in conscious entrepreneurship. You just make things up. It's like you can go get that for fun if you want the knowledge. I would think the University of Austin would be more like, we're going to do a clinical mental health counseling and a master's in business administration and a nursing, like.
But probably everyone that's attending there is just someone that wants to start a podcast right after.
Right. No, seriously.
Probably a huge, like over 50% are probably run a podcast.
Yeah,
at the University of Austin.
Yeah, they should do a degree that's just like digital marketing and general education. You know, just like we're just gonna train you to be a podcaster.
Yeah, like every person that's at that school I've heard of because they were on Rogan.
Right. Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Authority is not to be used as a bludgeon to shut down the exchange of ideas. Bob Trivers, evolutionary biologist par excellence, and our mentor in college, once advised us to seek positions in which we taught undergraduates. His reasoning was this: undergrads do not yet know the field, and so are likely to ask questions that you aren't expecting. Dumb questions, or ones imagined to already be settled. When the educator is confronted with such questions, one of three things is likely to be true. Sometimes the field is right, and the answer is simple, full stop. Sometimes the field is right, but the answer is complex, nuanced, or subtle. Figuring out or remembering how to explain that complexity or subtlety is worth the time of any thinker who deserves the title.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes the field is wrong and the answer is not understood, but it takes a naive view of the matter to ask the question.
That's really cool.
It's very true, and it's something I've thought about in like work situations in particular. Like, it's the people that have not been there very long that end up going like, hey, why does it work that way? And it's
Right.
like, oh, because we started doing that because this happened this way, and then
Right.
since then we've just like, okay, so should we do it a different way? Yeah, but we just haven't never got around. Like, it's oftentimes the new person that goes, what are we
Right.
doing?
Right.
Yeah. Higher education, in particular, should recognize that classrooms are effectively sterile boxes removed from the world. It is difficult to learn in such a situation because you won't run into the things that you need to learn, but that cannot be taught. Things like how to survive tree falls, boat accidents, and, as we will see in the next chapter, earthquakes. You get what I'm saying? So basically they're saying, like, go out in the world, that the classroom is sterile, and it's better to be, because they did a lot of field work with their students. They were big on going out, like, they would take them on long trips places.
That's
and,
cool.
Like, go out into the jungle and, like, really, like, risk a lot. Like, there was times where it sounded like it was close to someone dying, maybe. But they feel that was very important for learning.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Dude, see, those people, it'd be so cool if Evergreen chilled out a little bit and they could go back to Evergreen. That'd be so cool.
I'm sure the students in this class, I'm sure it was just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was an incredible school experience.
Right. Well, there's other schools like Naropa is in like Boulder, Colorado or something, and it's like a Buddhist-inspired university, and they have like programs like wilderness therapy. Like, there's other schools like that are like that are weird and progressive like that they might have fun at. But it'd be so cool to see them back in an environment like that.
I mean, honestly, they could just get on Twitter and be like, "Hey, can 30 students text me?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could just do that.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah. Well, they're probably going to do that at the University of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting that I don't even take that seriously. I keep forgetting that that's a thing. You just told me like 2 minutes ago, no, they're working at the University of Austin. No.
That can't be it.
No.
All right, this chapter is on becoming an adult. Explicitly aim to be an adult. Do this in part by regularly asking yourself the questions that we posed at the beginning of this chapter. Am I taking responsibility for my own actions? Am I being closed-minded? And by minimizing the effects of the economic markets on your daily life. Become aware of the constant flow of information telling you what to think, how to feel, how to eat. Do not let it into your mind. Do not let it steer you. Your internal reward structure needs to be independent and ungameable. That independence, in turn, should allow you to collaborate well with others who are similarly independent. Be wary of those who may well be nice, but who are captured. So I think this is about advertising, largely. About like being aware of all the ways that advertisements come at you. Because if you're not aware, if you're not thinking about like all the ways that people are advertising to you and all the ways that people are gathering data to better advertise to you,
right?
You have to fall victim to it because you think it's impossible that they could. You could end up thinking that things are synchronicities that are just.
That's exactly what I was just thinking of.
Yeah, they're just them spying on you. You got spied on. It's not God.
Right.
It's Google.
Right.
Yeah.
Close.
Pretty close. Google hopes.
In the NLP course that I took today, I was talking about someone trying to become a voice actor, and then an hour later, a YouTube ad was like, "It's easier than ever to be a voice actor." And of course, it's twice as loud as the program that I was watching. Like, I don't want to be a voice actor. You just heard it wrong.
Yeah. It's terrible. So you should know that that's what they're doing to you, and try to ignore it. And you can't ignore it if you don't know it.
One more quick thing.
Yeah.
The thinker sent me a summary of a book about that subject, and the metaphor it used was be a cat, not a dog, when it comes to marketing. Because dogs, like, you tell them what to do, they're going to do it every time. And cats, you tell them what to do, they will sometimes, like, if they feel like it. Like, Maybe. Be a cat towards advertising.
Why would I?
Like, sometimes be like, oh, yeah, I mean, that actually does sound good. And sometimes just be like, no, you're fine. You're just offering.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to like think about it, I guess.
I think so.
Always be learning. Look for collaborators. Play at competition and be prepared to stop playing if things get real. Be skeptical, but if not suspicious, of any novel prescription for which the rationale is unstated or thin on reflection. So if they don't have a really good reason to give you for doing this, then you should really be skeptical of that, if there's not solid evidence for what they're saying.
Right.
Revive or create rites of passage in your life. Celebrate not just the passage of time, birthdays, holidays, but also developmental transitions. Honor graduations and marriages, births and deaths, but also career and job changes and promotions, the completion of important analytical or creative tasks, and the ends of eras when they are recognizable as they end.
Very cool.
Seek out physical reality, not just social experience. Pursue feedback from the physical universe, not just from subjective social sources. Move your body, gain experience with model systems that tell you how things actually work. Get over your bigotry. Variation is our strength, not just sex and race and sexual orientation, but class, neurodiversity, characteristics of personality. All of this adds to what we can accomplish on Earth. That's sort of a classic far-right idea. These Nazis.
It actually is a conservative way of talking about diversity. No, like the liberal way of talking about diversity is like it's just listen to gays and blacks, and the conservative way is
pipe
like
down.
What about people with different personalities and shit? Like no, like Tommy Lahren would always be like I believe in diversity of ideas, and that would always be mocked like that's stupid. But it's like way more progressive to look for diversity of ideas than diversity of color, as if someone's fundamentally different because they're black. Like that's not diversity.
Right. Like, do you think a black guy can't have the same idea as me?
Right.
Why couldn't he?
Right, exactly. The whole point is that he has different ideas, and so Tommy Lahren was like definitely onto something.
Yeah.
She's just a dumb bitch on all sorts of things, but she's definitely onto something there. She's like, it's about having different ideas, not to be a different color. Isn't that racist? And so, like, you're making the joke that sounds far right, but it actually does, because he's saying diversity is not just about sex and race.
I suppose so. Yeah. But he's also, I suppose I was also referencing that because he said class, and neurodiversity. Let's also pay attention to people with autism and people with other kinds of ways of thinking.
Right.
Yeah. Place equality where it belongs. Equality should be focused on the equal valuation of our differences. It should not be a bludgeon for uniformity. So don't try and just make everyone the same.
Mm-hmm.
Smile at people. The people with whom you live, the person behind the counter, the stranger on the street. Be grateful. There's lots of little ones here. Laugh daily with other people. Which, I liked that one. That one made me think quite a bit about like how many people are watching TikTok in like on their bed in their room alone, and just kind of like sometimes giggling at their phone, but like
it all really happens internally when you're alone and you're just scrolling. You don't really.
If you do laugh,
like, that's about
just
it.
A little exhale.
Just H.
Put your phone down. No, really, put it down. That's the whole point.
Smash your fucking phone.
Smash your fucking phone. Why you still got that thing? You don't even like it. Define your fights for whom and what you love, rather than against whom and what you hate.
Love it.
If a mob ever comes for people you know, people whom you consider friends, stand up and say, "No, you're wrong." Be honorable and courageous when bullies move in. Speak up for what you know to be true, even if it makes you a social pariah.
Nice.
Very good.
They fucking put their money where their mouth was on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They've
really been brave
to get on that soapbox.
Yeah. Learn how to give useful critique without backing the other person into a corner. With our children, when they fall off a unicycle or don't do well on a math test.
What?
I guess they ride unicycles. I don't know. We tell them it's not your best work. Man, That honestly sounds so...
No, they don't.
What?
Your kid falls off a unicycle, you do not say, not your best work. No, you don't.
Watching your kid ride a unicycle, they fall off and they're crying. Not your best
work.
work.
No, you don't.
You're capable of more than that.
No, it's a good point, though. They're just saying, hey, you did your best. No, they didn't. No, they said you didn't do your best. Whatever.
It's true. It doesn't pretend that every action is worthy of a gold star, and it demonstrates that we know they can do better work, and that this wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
So in a literal sense, it's true. And these are robot aliens, so that's what they mean.
Right, that's what they meant.
Count fewer things about your life. Calories, steps, minutes, and do more. Which, kind of easy in theory, but
count less and do more.
Count fewer things about your life. Calories, steps, minutes, and do more.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because, some people take the steps thing to where, walking is almost like a chore. I completed this much chore today.
Yeah.
In terms of just falling in love with being active.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
So, the walking is, something that is paid really specific attention to. The act of walking rather than the experience of walking?
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Yeah.
The accomplishment of walking rather than the experience of walking.
True. Yeah, the end, not the path, not the walk.
Right.
Yeah. Develop a theory of close calls. When a close call occurs, have a plan for how you will leverage it to gain a better understanding of yourself and the world. Calm down and level up. So if you find yourself in a situation where you almost could have died, think about that and going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to jump curves. Diminishing returns are a factor for every complex phenomenon, so learn to jump curves. Put another way, consider learning a new thing rather than being a perfectionist and trying to get ever better at whatever you are already really, really good at. We will speak to this more in the final chapter. Something that they talk about quite a bit is that they think there's a lot of value in people being trained across different fields, which I think is something we've talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
A lot of what we're doing with this podcast even is learning about different fields and then kind of talking about different ways that they cross over.
And that's why I'm doing 2 school programs. It's I want to take 2 of these and braid them together and probably have something stronger.
Totally. This one is culture and consciousness.
Very cool.
Sit around more campfires. They really, really like campfires, and they talk about campfires a lot in the book as a metaphor for the sort of ancestral way that we function, in that we all go out and we all learn things and we all go eat berries and we learn things about the world, and then we're meant to gather around a campfire and tell each other about it and learn from each other and share all of our experiences. And they feel that is, and I agree, that is a really deep core thing about us. This sort of we need to gather and we need to debrief and we need to explain to each other what we saw, and then we can tell each other oh, I saw something like that and here's what I thought about it, and we can compare notes that way. And that's a really important thing for us to be doing. Can you imagine if we if we lived in a community where we did that? And we actually, every night we all got together and we sat around a fire and we just talked about what things we learned that day.
Yeah.
Do you want to be cool if we set up a thing where we just had a fire every night and people could or could not show up?
Oh, that's interesting.
But then you'd have to have a fire every night. Then
I was thinking of weekly. You guys just got a fire pit, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be a pretty, we could probably pull off doing it weekly.
Yeah. We can honestly do it at Dad's house, too. That'd be a nice place for it. But
that would be cool. More stars.
Yeah.
I think we should take 20 minutes right now just to plan all that out.
Let's really nail this down. Evan, what's your schedule look like for fires? All right.
And is there anything you want to put on the agenda for our first fire?
Yeah.
That was good.
not that joke. Not that joke. Honor or create...
You can't ask Evan to say shit on camera.
Honor or create rituals that recur. annually, seasonally, weekly, or even daily. They may be ancient and religious in origin, example, honoring the Sabbath or Lent, a time for both selective privation and community. Astronomical, example, recognizing and celebrating the solstices or equinoxes, or entirely new with you and yours. So it's good to have rituals.
Mm-hmm.
This Jordan Peterson said on the H3 podcast that now never happened.
Right. Hey, if it's a ritual,
yeah. I don't think I've told the story.
I'm happy to cooperate.
Jordan Peterson showed up on their podcast and they had this big stupid vape. They made Vape Nation was a big goof for H3, and they made this vape that was they had to it had handles, and it was 80 pounds or something. It was a huge box. And Jordan Peterson hit the vape. It had a surgical tube on it, and he hit the vape and blew just the biggest cloud, and then was like, "Rituals are important." And it was great.
So funny.
And they took the podcast down.
And now H3 ruined it
because they're frauds.
We should do CE5 monthly. That was a very meaningful, fun ritual.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
Be ash negative. Ash here is spelled ASCH, and this refers to an experiment that I didn't know the name of the guy, but we've all heard of this experiment, I think. Basically what he did was he took a person, you're being tested, and you're being put in a room with 4 other people that are taking the same test.
Mm-hmm.
The other 4 people are all plants. Meaning they're in on the test. So there's 4 lines on the board, and you're supposed to say which line you think is the shortest of the lines. Now, everybody before you is going to say the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to you, are you going to say the right answer? Or are you going to fall in line with the people that are saying and say the wrong answer? Because they all seem confident of that, so I don't want to look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently only 1 in 4 people will say what they actually believe to be true.
That just means that only 1 in 4 people are familiar with scientific experiments. They would recognize, this is an experiment. This is an experiment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because why should they be embarrassed?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have to look into the
if you know it's an experiment, you're
specifically.
going to answer it correctly. If you don't know it's an experiment, you're going to be like, this is weird. I'm just going to go along with it. But if you have the thought, this is probably just an experiment. I want to give the right answer, So I feel like that would come down to how aware are you of social experiments.
Yeah, I wonder the way it was structured and how that was.
Oh, yeah, because maybe they had a really good way of playing it off.
Maybe
at a job interview or something like that.
Maybe they did.
Yeah, who knows?
But
Somebody.
So to be the ash negative would be the one that goes against.
Mm-hmm.
The ash is the typical ash outcome, I guess. Teach children how to bootstrap their own program so that they can be individually conscious. The tension that we have described between culture and consciousness has an analog during development. Trying to teach children precisely how to be adults by inculcating them solely with the cultural rules that have come before will fail. In a world of hyper-novelty, many aspects of culture are ever less relevant, and consciousness is imperative. So don't just teach your kids how to exist in this world. Teach your kids how to learn how to exist in any world.
Oh, so teach them how to niche switch?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Consider engaging with psychedelics carefully. If there is anything in you that is curious, they are now legal in some places, but consider engaging them as the powerful cognitive tools that they are, not as a form of recreation. That doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Is that what it says?
It really does, yeah. Yeah, it's a good line.
That's awesome.
They talked a bit about it on Rogan too, about how
what psychedelics are they into?
The specific one that they mentioned was shrooms.
That's what
but I don't know that they
That's the most
done.
That's the most interesting to an evolutionary biologist.
For sure. Yeah. Heather said on I think Rogan's podcast, if you don't know what to think, if you're having a hard time coming up with an idea of how to solve a problem, get out in nature, eat some mushrooms, see what happens. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Frick, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. When he is editing and he hits a dry point, he eats 1 cap. Never a stem, always a cap.
That's
just
interesting.
Eat 1 cap, and then it'll just rejuvenate his creativity for whatever reason. I don't understand the psychopharmacology of that at all.
That's really cool.
He eats 1 cap, gets him to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I personally find it very disorienting to use small amounts of psychedelics like that, but it works great for him.
Yeah. And then this is the closing chapter. Learn to hack and kludge your own mental architecture for a better life. Keep markets as far from your motivational structure as you can. So try not to let money motivate you as much as you can.
Yeah.
Don't let someone else's profit motive determine what you desire or do. Keep commerce away from children for as long as possible. Children raised to put high value on the transactional nature of being become dedicated consumers. Consumers are less observant, meditative, and deeply thoughtful than people who value creating, discovering, healing, producing, experiencing, communicating.
Right. Cool.
Individuals need to calm down and level up. Rely less on metrics, more on experience, hypothesis, and deriving truth and meaning from first principles. Rely less on static rules and seek an understanding of the context in which those rules are appropriate.
Right. That's like I mentioned how somebody who was just completely dogmatically anti-Christian was like, picked out this biblical principles, like, this is just stupid, we need to throw this in the garbage. But on the other end, there's people who like are still like cramming biblical principles down people's throats that have been irrelevant for so long. It's like, God, you don't even understand the context of why that doesn't
a really
apply
good point.
anymore. Let it go. So it happens on both sides, like of the fence. Like, some people refuse to tear the fence down because they forgot why it existed, and some people want to tear it down because they don't know why it existed.
Absolutely true. Yeah, you can go wrong either way.
Yeah.
Dispense with anything predicated on a utopian vision that focuses on a single value.
Woo.
As soon as someone reveals that they are trying to maximize a single value, for example, freedom or justice, know that they are not an adult.
That's a very immature way of wording that.
He said, dispense with anything predicated on a utopian vision that focuses on a single value. As soon as someone reveals that they are trying to maximize a single value, for example, freedom or justice, you know that they are not an adult. Now,
that's petty.
I suppose so. It didn't read that way to me. It didn't feel petty to me because they had a chapter earlier called Becoming an Adult, and so they have an idea of like what they want, of like how they think an adult should learn to try and think.
Cool.
And so they're using it with
they're referencing something. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought they're just randomly slinging a petty insult.
You know that they are a stupid man.
I do really like that principle, though. That's
yeah.
really cool.
And there's one more bullet point to that one. Liberty is emergent, therefore not a single value. It is an emergent consequence of having fixed the other problems. For example, justice, security, innovation, stability, community, camaraderie. Liberty is emergent. So freedom...
Because like one way I would think about that is freedom operates... freedom is a yang and safety is a yin. Justice is a yang and mercy is a yin. They operate in a dualistic relationship with an opposing value, but liberty stands on its own. Like, liberty stands at the center. I think that's the way I interpret that.
Liberty stands at the center.
Yeah, like there's not an opposite of liberty. Like, the opposite of liberty is restriction, not a good value. Like, justice, great value. Mercy, great value. Balance each other. And then the same thing with freedom and safety. But there's no opposite of liberty that's good.
Okay. Liberty is emergent, therefore not a single value. If it is an emergent consequence of having fixed the other problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if you're in a balanced situation.
Right.
Okay.
Like if you balance freedom and safety appropriately. Like for the people who argue for freedom, they get heard, they get their point. Safety, same thing. Balance mercy and justice appropriately. Liberty emerges out of that. Like I would view it like liberty is transcendent, not dualistic. Like, liberty is an absolute value.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom is a dualistic value. Like, if you go, we need to be safe, or you go, we need to be free. It's like, well, shut up. You're missing half the point.
How do you define freedom and liberty different?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make what he's saying work in my head.
Okay.
I don't know what would be fundamentally different about freedom and liberty.
Yeah, that one's a little confusing.
I can tell you the way I justified in my head But just know that this is not based on any pre-understood definitions of liberty and freedom. I'm just trying to make it work in the situation.
Okay.
So if everybody, if anarchy arose and everybody could do whatever they wanted, everyone's fucking each other up, you'd have freedom to do whatever you want, but you wouldn't have liberty. Like liberty is like freedom with the stability to actually pursue things, like purposeful freedom, like freedom with opportunity and the lack of restriction around pursuing opportunity. So like if we have a whole system around us right now, we could go do any career we want. We have liberty, but that's more than freedom. It's because it's like liberty is what, because like why do we have the liberty to go do any career we want right now? Because we have enough freedom and enough safety to maintain this
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, so it's the ability to do things with the safety to do them.
Yeah, the freedom and safety to do what you want to do.
Right.
But I just made up those definitions to fit. I don't know if those are actually the definitions of freedom and liberty.
Probably not, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Society-wide, we should, like the Maya, invest our surplus in public works, which make us anti-fragile. This is referring to, they discuss a bit about how big and how long-living the Mayan Empire was in South America. Mm-hmm. Because when they had surpluses, I guess I don't know everything about how they know what they know, but their understanding is that when there was surpluses within the Mayan culture, they wouldn't be spending that on frivolous things that would not last. They would instead be spending their time or spending their resources on spreading out the empire and like creating more pyramids and creating more roads that go out further. So as they made their society bigger and expanded it farther and farther, it made them anti-fragile in that parts of the system could die off without all of it. Whereas a lot of we centralize a lot more than they do in our empire. Yeah. You get what I'm saying?
So if we operated more like the Mayans, there'd be more Musks who are like, let's use all of this surplus to try to get somewhere new and expand instead of just sit around and busy ourselves with
I think that'd be a good modern way to view it. Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
That's the way a modern would think of it.
Yeah. Those dang moderns. Prototype. Yeah. Move to a precautionary mindset such that we can learn to regulate our industries effectively, minimizing any negative externalities that they create. Move to a precautionary mindset so that we can learn to regulate our industries effectively, minimizing any negative externalities that they create. So, we should be careful. Yeah. And last thing, consider Chesterton's fence in all of its guises, from healthcare to cuisine, from play to religion. We should always think about every system and whether or not it is good, whether or not it needs to go, or whether it needs to stay.
Mm-hmm. They emphasize that point a lot. They're really worried about excessive evolution, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, they think we're changing too many things and not thinking enough about the things that we're changing. Mm-hmm. And I agree. Mm-hmm. The book is... There's a lot of interesting ideas in it. It wasn't the funnest for me to read because, like, the tone... I mean, you heard a lot of the tone, and, like, it becomes more of a slog when they're not trying to summarize at the end of chapters.
Oh, that's right. I just heard the summaries, yeah. It's a book that needs to be edited.
Yeah, probably. There's a lot of shit. They cover a lot of different topics in it. So I don't know how much more they would be willing to edit. I mean, maybe it just needs to be edited for language, like in a slightly different tone. But that's their tone.
Yeah.
And it's not my favorite, although I have a lot of respect for them and for their bravery. Mm-hmm. In the public sphere, when what happened at Evergreen was nuts, and it was very bold of them to go through it and to stand their ground the whole time.
Yeah,
I honestly think that if it came down to it, they would have died. Like if it came down to, do I acquiesce to this crowd or do I just get beaten to death? I think they would have.
They would have been willing to die.
Yeah, really. Yeah, they really seem like they're that hardcore about it, and so. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for them. And
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It is an admirable book, although not the funnest to read.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions or comments or anything?
No, we're at 2 hours. I ain't saying nothing.
All right. Night school.
Power couple.
Power couple. You didn't say it, though.
Night school.
Cool.